Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Defeated Phantom Lord. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The whole guild of Fairy Tail watched in horror as Jose Parla laughed. Phantom Lord had just launched 2 assaults on their guild in an attempt to capture Lucy Heartfilia and to eliminate their competition for the title of strongest guild in Fiore. With the guild crumbling around them and comrades wounded, the members could only stand and watch as Phantom Lord pressed its advantage. Jose Parla laughed maniacally and taunted that Makarov and even Urza the Titania had been incapacitated, asking what the fairies would do now. Urza glared at him without answering. Jose demanded that they hand Lucy Heartfilia over. Natsu insisted that they would never surrender a comrade, and Macau roared that they would defend their own to the end. Lucy thought of everyone tearfully, fearful for her friends. A bright flash lit the guild room, and a rough, gravelly voice cut through the noise as everyone turned toward the newcomer. The man complained that he had been gone on a mission for a week and returned to find the guild in chaos. Lucy found herself looking at a teenager no older than she was. He had blonde, spiky hair and sky-blue eyes that seemed to brighten the room. Whisker-like marks dotted his cheeks, and a belt full of celestial keys clinked at his side. Lucy realized with shock that he was a celestial spirit mage, a rare sight. The guild erupted in relieved shouts as the blonde man jumped down from a balcony to face Jose Parla. Wakaba exclaimed that Naruto had arrived and they were saved. Urza expressed relief that Naruto Uzumaki was there. Mira Jane explained that Naruto was one of Fairy Tail's strongest mages, a celestial spirit mage and something more. With him present, Phantom Lord would not stand a chance. Jose Parla dismissed them and claimed that 1 or 2 fairies would not change his plans to destroy the guild. Naruto growled that no one would be allowed to destroy Fairy Tail. He produced a key marked with the Roman numeral 1. He drew a tiny drop of blood from his finger and smeared it on the key. A puff of sand coalesced into the form of a human-sized tanuki beside him. Jose laughed at the creature and mocked it as a harmless animal. The sand spirit, Shikaku, roared back indignantly and then expanded, filling the guild room and crashing through a wall to confront Jose. The spirit's attack was dramatic but non-graphic, presented like an intense anime battle scene. Sand surged from the floor in a sweeping wave that overwhelmed Jose and forced the Phantom Lord members to retreat. Jose was dragged away by his allies, badly wounded and unable to stand. Naruto praised Shikaku for following orders as the sand spirit vanished with all the sand. Naruto then suggested a simple plan. The guild should go after the remaining Phantom Lord members and defeat them. Natsu protested that Naruto should not take all the credit, and Elfman declared he would join the fight. Gray also insisted he would take part. The Fairy Tail members descended on the Phantom Lord forces and, in a fast-paced, non-graphic skirmish, overwhelmed and routed them. Later, Naruto sat at the guild bar, eating bowl after bowl of ramen, wearing a battle outfit with a red scarf, a white fox mask at his belt, and a black headband bearing the Fairy Tail insignia. Urza introduced him to someone by gently shoving Lucy forward. Lucy squeaked, waved awkwardly, and then retreated. Naruto wondered aloud why Lucy had seemed so flustered. Urza suggested it might have been the effect of his celestial spirits or his presence. She and Naruto had been close friends since their younger days in the Tower of Heaven. Urza remembered the day she woke to shouting outside her cell and saw guards throw a boy into the prison. The boy had sunblonde hair and blue eyes, with 3 whisker marks on his cheeks. He looked terrified and bewildered as the doors were locked behind him. The boy asked where he was in a fragile voice, and other prisoners began to explain the situation and introduce themselves. When it was her turn, Urza told him her name. The boy looked at her, blushed, and introduced himself as Naruto. That memory softened Urza, who had watched him adapt with surprising resilience. Back in the present, Naruto joked with sarcasm that he would get along well with the newcomers. Urza laughed and reassured him that he would be fine. Naruto finished another bowl of ramen, and when Natsu challenged him to a fight without using celestial spirits, Naruto, annoyed, punched Natsu and knocked him out, explaining that a fight was not going to happen while he was eating. Lucy was stunned by what she had seen. It was rare to witness a celestial spirit mage dispatch a dragon slayer so effortlessly. The rest of the guild laughed and speculated that Naruto was on an entirely different level, perhaps as strong as Guildarts, perhaps even a master. Lucy wondered in disbelief how anyone could be that powerful. Lucy thought he was as young as they were. Suddenly Natsu woke and sprang to his feet. Natsu challenged the older man, but before he could finish, Naruto added another tally and delivered a quick, comical knock that left Natsu dazed and slumping back. Naruto insisted he was not old and noted that he was eating his ramen. The rest of the guild roared with laughter while Lucy reacted with a nervous, embarrassed expression. Naruto walked home with his mask on as the people of Magnolia waved. Some admired him, some watched in awe. He was well known throughout Fiore as Fire Shadow, or Hokage, a name he had made for himself. He never took off his mask in public because he was afraid. Even the great Fire Shadow felt fear. Years earlier, Naruto had run through the alleyways, trying to escape a mob that chased him. His parents, the fourth Hokage and the red-hot habanero, paid him little attention and favored his siblings, Mito and Taisuke. He fell and scraped his knee but ignored the pain and pressed on toward home. That night he decided he would leave when everyone was asleep. He wrote a short letter explaining that he had had enough of their neglect and that he was leaving, then packed his few belongings and slipped out the front gate. He was nearly out of the land of fire before fatigue overtook him and he collapsed. A man crouched down in front of him and asked what he was doing there and where his parents were. Naruto looked up at the man, who wore a strange metal headband, had red marks on his face, and long white hair, and said briefly that his parents did not care for him. The man studied him for a moment, then offered to become his guardian and motioned for him to follow. Naruto smiled and ran to his side, asking where they were going. The man promised to take him to a place where he would be happy. Jiraiya understood the situation and agreed never to tell Naruto's parents where he was. After hearing the boy's story, Jiraiya's anger toward Minato flared. He could not believe someone would leave a child like this to die. Jiraiya told Naruto that starting the next day he would train him in the ways of the ninja, and when the training was complete he would send Naruto on his way. Naruto nodded and watched his new foster parent with admiration. Jiraiya had become his hero. Little did Naruto know that his hero would soon be taken from him. 1 year later, Jiraiya confronted Minato over the harm done to his own students, his voice tense with accusation. Naruto called out to his mentor as he ran down from Mount Myaboku, and Jiraiya warned Naruto that the area was not safe. Naruto turned and saw the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, standing nearby. In a sudden blur, Minato moved behind Jiraiya and delivered a swift, decisive strike that felled him. Minato then urged Naruto to come with him. Anger and grief washed over Naruto. Hatred filled his thoughts. A small key suddenly appeared in his hand. He instinctively pricked his finger and touched the key with his blood. Smoke curled from the key and a deep, otherworldly roar resonated. Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, manifested in a massive, fearsome form. Legends spoke of the beast's destructive power. Kurama gathered chakra and launched an overwhelming attack toward Minato while warning Naruto to run and promising to handle the threat. Naruto felt confusion at the fox calling him friend and fighting for him, but exhaustion overtook him and he collapsed as the world went dark. The memory never left Naruto. It was the first time he had truly glimpsed the power sealed within him, a power that had cost his sensei his life. The nine-tailed fox, Kurama, had been sealed into Naruto, and that sealing was the source of the village's fear and rejection. Kurama, however, had shown unusual sympathy and a desire to protect Naruto. After he had been overwhelmed by fatigue, mages from the Tower of Heaven found Naruto and took him in. That was when he met Urza. Naruto made his way to the forest near Magnolia, where he often slept in the trees, perhaps out of habit influenced by Matabi. He favored one particular tree with red and orange leaves. It stood out from the green trees around it as if created by magic. He climbed onto a branch and lay down. A puff of smoke produced a small nine-tailed fox that curled up on his lap, and Naruto smiled before closing his eyes. More puffs of smoke followed, and the other tailed beasts appeared and settled around him. Naruto muttered in mild frustration at the number of restless creatures, then smiled and drew them in closer. When the miniature-tailed beasts awoke, Naruto asked whether they were going to stay with him or go their own way. Chom, the seven tails, told him they would stay. Naruto sighed, shouldered 8 of the beasts, and balanced the 9th on his head before heading toward the guild. Inside the guild, Natsu and Gray were at it again, their usual fiery and frosty rivalry on display. Natsu threatened to cook Gray, and Gray retorted that he would turn Natsu into a popsicle. Naruto interrupted, telling them bluntly to stop and carry on elsewhere. Gray noted that the remark did not make sense, and Naruto pointed out Gray's habit of removing his clothes for eccentric reasons. The exchange grew playful and competitive, with insults traded. Natsu called Gray a snowman and Gray called Natsu a flame brain, but the taunting remained lighthearted. Lucy expressed exasperation as Naruto calmly put an end to the skirmish between the two mages, taking them down quickly and leaving them scowling. Makarov observed the commotion and noted that Naruto had brought all of his unusual companions with him. Urza, delighted by the sight of the 9-tailed creature and its counterparts, exclaimed that they were adorable and moved to gather them up. The tailed beasts grumbled and bantered among themselves. Gyuki complained that Kurama always got the attention, Shikaku offered a teasing remark about Gyuki, and the others chimed in with humorous jabs. The guild filled with laughter and lively chatter as the creatures explored their new surroundings. The day passed with lively activity and camaraderie as the guild members adjusted to the extraordinary presence among them. Naruto looked at the request board and selected a sheet that tasked him with protecting a Leaf team escorting a bridge builder, with a reward of 400,000 jewels. He began to tear the paper up, but Master Makarov stopped him. Makarov scolded Naruto and smiled as he ordered him to accept the mission and do whatever was necessary. Naruto nodded, gathered his bags, and summoned Kurama, telling the spirit that they were going back home. Kurama acknowledged him. Minato introduced himself with a laugh, noting that he too was called Fire Shadow. Naruto could barely hide his irritation at the blonde man. A girl burst into the room, sobbing that they still had not found traces of someone important. Minato reassured her and tried to calm her. Naruto recognized the girl as Mito, one of his siblings, and was surprised to see a tear slip from Minato's eye. Another smaller girl entered and looked upon Naruto with obvious disgust. Kurama thought darkly about the Hokage's children, while Minato explained that this girl was also joining the mission. The girl declared that she did not need Naruto. Naruto warned her not to behave as if she were the strongest, asserting that there was always someone stronger and that he happened to be one of them. The girl glared in response, and Minato reprimanded her for speaking to a guest in that manner. Naruto felt surprised that his ex-father would defend him. Minato, who did not truly know who Naruto was, simply instructed him to prepare, informing him that they would depart in 10 minutes. Naruto stood with his mask on, as stoic as ever. Nami nudged Sasuke and asked why that man seemed strange. Naruto replied sternly that, given what someone had endured, they might act similarly, and he reminded them of his current position as their superior and demanded respect. Nami scoffed that he could do nothing and insulted him. At that moment, a powerful aura washed over the group. Naruto warned again against disrespect, suggesting it could land someone in the hospital or worse, then turned away. Sasuke studied Naruto, puzzled by how someone so young could be so strong. As an Uchiha, Sasuke was confident in his own strength, but he would soon learn that he had misjudged the situation. Team 7, Naruto, and Tazuna walked along a dirt road. Naruto looked up at the sky as Kakashi kept pace beside him. Kakashi suppressed a smile while Sasuke maintained a neutral expression. Naruto stepped away for a moment. Something unexpected occurred that drew everyone's attention. The group charged at a blonde teenager only to be immediately subdued after Naruto blurred behind them. Naruto examined the attackers and noticed metal gauntlets on their hands, wondering what they were. Later, Naruto called out playfully to coax a hiding ninja, offering cookies as bait. Team 7 covered their faces in exasperation as Naruto persisted, trying to draw the frightened ninja, Zabuza, out of the trees. Zabuza was terrified and refused to descend. Earlier, Naruto had nudged Kakashi and pointed out a sensed presence. Kakashi ordered everyone to get down just before a massive sword struck a nearby tree, and Zabuza Momochi revealed himself. Naruto taunted the sword-wielding man for not even facing them properly. Zabuza's face paled, and he scrambled up the tree in panic, abandoning his weapon. Naruto continued to call for him to come down, promising cookies as bait. Zabuza recognized Naruto as the Great Fire Shadow and begged for forgiveness. Zabuza pleaded for mercy. A teenager wearing an ANBU mask dropped down and knelt before Naruto, begging that his master be spared and offering himself instead. Naruto, still insisting on cookies as leverage, behaved in a childish and exasperating manner. Team 7 face-bombed at his antics. Naruto then stated that he was not interested in killing anyone at that moment. Naruto insisted that he wanted to fight, and Kakashi quickly covered Naruto's mouth before pulling him down from the tree. Kakashi then dragged Naruto away while Zabuza pleaded for mercy. Zabuza begged to be spared, and Naruto, unnaturally calm, told Zabuza to come down. Zabuza scrambled down, forgetting his sword, and knelt in front of Naruto, promising to do anything if he would spare him. Naruto declared that he wanted to test his strength, that he had heard Zabuza was a good fighter, and that afterward Zabuza would come with him to join his guild. Zabuza nodded, confused about guilds but complying. Naruto challenged Zabuza to fight there and told him not to hold back. Zabuza shakily picked up his sword. Naruto blurred behind him and landed a solid blow that sent Zabuza reeling. Naruto laughed at how well the move worked. They later arrived at Tazuna's house. Naruto was asleep, and Sasuke, noticing how easily Naruto had defeated 3 ninjas and the high bounty on his head, wondered about his strength as he tried to climb a tree. Naruto woke with a sigh and stepped outside when he heard commotion. He found 3 youngsters struggling to climb a tree and laughed at their difficulty. Nami glared and challenged him to try. Naruto smirked, climbed the tree effortlessly, and kicked it over, sending it crashing to pieces. He started back toward the house when Sasuke suddenly begged Naruto to train him and take him as an apprentice. Naruto stopped and smiled under his mask. Naruto warned that the training would be hard, but Sasuke insisted that he did not care and pleaded to be accepted as a student. Naruto agreed and told Sasuke to meet him at midnight for training before vanishing. Sasuke walked into the forest and found Naruto waiting. Naruto remarked that it was good Sasuke had stayed awake and announced that their training would begin. Sakura and Nami watched the two spar, both exhausted and wondering how the boys could keep going. During the sparring, Naruto disarmed Sasuke and had a kunai at Sasuke's throat as he assessed him. Naruto told Sasuke that he was better than most at taijutsu and instructed him to show any ninjutsu or genjutsu he had. The forest flared with fire techniques that Naruto quickly quelled. Naruto praised Sasuke's fire jutsu, and Sasuke felt proud to receive praise from someone so powerful. Naruto then insisted Sasuke learn the shadow clone jutsu, explaining that practicing with clones would transfer memories back to the original and speed up training. He tossed Sasuke a scroll and said he would teach him personally once he had studied it. Nami questioned why Naruto would not teach Sasuke directly, and Sakura shrugged, saying she just wanted Sasuke to get what he wanted. Sakura went to sleep, and Nami stayed to watch Sasuke train. A sudden boom woke Nami, and she jumped from bed to see Sasuke shouting the name of a technique as he slammed a blue sphere of chakra into a boulder, shattering it. Kakashi ran out concerned at the noise. Naruto excitedly announced that Sasuke was a prodigy, boasting that Sasuke had finished the first 2 steps of that technique in one night. Kakashi widened his eye in surprise, wondering how Naruto knew that technique. Nami scoffed at the name of the technique, and Naruto explained that it was created by Sasuke's father. Nami muttered and Naruto made a quiet comment about her mood. Nami heard it and angrily punched Naruto and Sasuke into the air in a sudden burst, sending them flying comically. At the bridge site, Naruto, Team 7, Zabuza, and Haku watched the construction when Gato mocked Zabuza for abandoning the contract. Suddenly 100 mercenaries appeared behind Gato and Gato ordered them to attack. Naruto warned everyone to stay back and formed hand signs. Naruto unleashed a spectacular sequence of jutsu, a fire technique that erupted into an army-like formation of flaming figures charging the mercenaries, followed by lightning that crackled through the enemy lines, and finally a wind spear that Naruto moved and threw. The wind spear struck Gato and brought him down, ending his ability to continue the attack. The young genin watched in awe at how effortlessly Naruto had subdued the large group. Naruto grinned and said he had not used that many jutsu in a long time. A sudden wave of strange energy washed over them, and Naruto alone sensed its source. He realized the bridge was dangerously close to the Tower of Heaven. Naruto commanded everyone to stay put, removed weights from his leg and dropped them into the sea, creating a massive wave, then ran across the water and vanished from sight. Kakashi and Sasuke recognized how Naruto had moved, and Naruto reappeared atop the tower where the pressure of magic was strongest. On the tower, the blue-haired man laughed triumphantly and declared that Zeref would be revived. He stood over Urza with her sword pointed threateningly toward her. The scene on the tower was tense and dangerous. Natsu ran toward the conflict but collapsed onto the ground, completely drained of magical energy. Naruto suddenly recognized the blue-haired man as Jalal, an old acquaintance from the Tower of Heaven who had been corrupted by a dark force named Zeref and continued building the tower to revive that power. Anger swelled in Naruto at the thought of his friends and Urza being hurt. Naruto shouted that Jalal should get away from Urza and moved in, slamming his fist into Jalal's face. Naruto then activated Tailed Beast style, Planetary Rasengan, forming a fire-red Rasengan in his hand surrounded by smaller orbs. He struck Jalal in the stomach, sending him flying into the ether ion wall. Naruto followed with multi-shadow clone jutsu, creating hundreds of clones that formed Rasengan and slammed them into Jalal and the tower. The coordinated attacks shattered the magic crystals and brought the tower down in a dramatic anime-style collapse. Urza opened her eyes to find herself on a beach with Natsu beside her, disoriented. Jalal stood nearby and told her that she had become strong, which left Urza breathless and then smiling up at the sky. A loud voice called Urza by a teasing nickname. Naruto crossed the sand and found a playful blonde woman already on the shore. The blonde playfully addressed Naruto and pointed out that she had heard his protective shout about Urza, teasing him about what he meant. She laughed and suggested in a joking way that Naruto might like her. Naruto flushed and, flustered, stammered that he would go elsewhere before quickly leaving. Urza watched him go and found herself unexpectedly warmed by the moment, feeling a flutter of emotion. Naruto later stood on a tree branch while Kakashi explained the details of the Chunin exams to his genin, noting the similarities to an S-rank test. When Kakashi departed in a flash, Naruto jumped down and approached Sasuke, asking him to walk together. Naruto explained that some days he would not be there to train and that if Sasuke wanted more consistent training, he could travel outside Konoha with him. Naruto reassured Sasuke that they would return to visit friends from time to time and emphasized that bonds with friends were a source of strength. Sasuke agreed that he would go, focused on his goal of avenging the Uchiha clan with Naruto as the key to that path. Suddenly a commotion drew Naruto and Sasuke's attention. Konohamaru had been playing with friends when a rough-looking man in black grabbed him. The man in black growled at the child, and Kankuro threatened the group from nearby, but a warm, gravelly voice intervened and told Kankuro to let the child go. The masked savior, golden hair, sapphire eyes, and an outfit resembling Anbu attire kicked the aggressor away so forcefully the man ended up in a crater. Konohamaru stared in awe, then looked up to find only leaves drifting softly to the ground where his rescuer had been. At another moment, Naruto handed Sasuke an orange leaf and instructed him to be prepared for the next exams, telling him to use what he had been taught and to rip the leaf when the final exams arrived. Sasuke asked how Naruto would know when the finals would come, but Naruto was already gone, leaving nothing but a breeze. Naruto burst into the guild to find members brawling as usual. He pushed two newcomers forward, Zabuza and Haku, and announced their arrival. The guild members greeted Zabuza and Haku briefly before returning to their fights. Natsu, excited as ever, challenged an older guild member to a fight. A wave of magic suddenly swept the hall, sending many guild members to the floor in sleep. Lucy fell down, bewildered by what was happening. Naruto remained unaffected, treating the disturbance as a mere annoyance. A man with blue hair, a red eye tattoo, and a mask entered the guild worn gray robes, staffs and weapons containing lacrimas on his back. The newcomer was Mystigan. Naruto poked Mystigan in his customary playful manner. Mystigan, clearly irritated by the childish behavior of the energetic S-rank mage, asked Naruto to stop poking him. Naruto refused with his usual cheerful persistence. Mystigan then strode to the request board, took a mission, and walked out while counting down from 5 to 1. Urza later announced that there were some newcomers. Naruto looked up from his ramen, curious. Urza pointed out 2 of the new arrivals, one entirely blue in appearance and the other a dark-haired man who carried himself like the Phantom Guild's Metal Dragon Slayer Naruto recognized. Urza admitted that she did not trust the black-haired man, and Naruto asked Urza if she was all right. She blushed, realized the distance between them, then called out that she was okay and ran off. The feeling she had been experiencing felt strange. Naruto sat in a tree and watched Laxus approach Gajeel accompanied by Jet and Droy, clearly intending to confront him. Naruto shouted Laxus's name. Droy and Jet's heads whipped up before they turned and ran off with Levi following behind. Laxus sneered at Naruto, mocking him as the one who called himself the best mage in the guild and questioning what he wanted. Naruto demanded that Laxus leave Gajeel alone and give him a chance. Laxus muttered that people like Naruto tarnished Fairy Tail's reputation, glared at him, and walked off. Naruto noted that Gajeel had been acting strangely lately and asked the Dragon Slayer if he wanted to go eat ramen. Gajeel admitted he did not know what ramen was. He had never eaten much besides the healthy foods he favored. Naruto gasped at Gajeel's unfamiliarity with ramen and dragged him along the floor to show him what it was. Gajeel privately resolved never to eat ramen with addicts after Naruto watched every bite. He found the noodles too salty and unappealing, but he did not correct Naruto because he did not want to risk a confrontation like those he had seen between other guild members. Instead he pretended to enjoy the meal, forcing a cheerful response. Naruto beamed at discovering another ramen lover and launched into an enthusiastic speech about becoming ramen buddies. Gajeel stared at him, overwhelmed by the intensity of Naruto's excitement and feeling as if he might be consumed by it. Naruto urged him to stay present, and Gajeel blinked back into the moment only to have his face accidentally hit the bowl. He lost consciousness. Naruto wailed dramatically while the others reacted with exasperated expressions and mild disbelief at his theatrics. It was the day of the Miss Fairy Tail competition and everyone had gathered in the guild hall, except for the tall blonde man, who was still strolling toward the building at a leisurely pace. A young boy bumped into him and looked up fearfully, expecting a harsh reaction from the imposing figure known as the Fire Shadow, a mage rumored to rival the greatest wizard saints. The towering blonde instead knelt and patted the boy's head, reassuring him that he would not be hurt. The boy smiled, hugged him briefly, and ran off. Naruto smiled too. He enjoyed seeing children happy and wanted them to have more joy than he had at their age. Naruto entered the hall expecting a lively spectacle but found 6 stone statues where his friends had been. He heard Laxus's voice declare that the games should begin. Naruto watched as several guild members were freed from the seals while others remained trapped. Anger rose in him at the thought that Laxus believed he could get away with this. He struck the wall in frustration and called on Kurama. A powerful roar echoed and golden energy spread through him, giving him an almost otherworldly appearance. Makarov reacted with shock. Naruto explained that this was a form he had never shown before, a power strong enough to overcome even some of the 10 wizard saints. Someone warned that the seal would not hold against such power, and Laxus's earlier challenge hung in the air as the contest began. The guild watched in amazement as Naruto punched the barrier and cracked it, invoking Otama Rasengan to shatter the ward. When the barrier broke, the members cheered. Naruto instructed everyone to stay behind while he handled the threat, then told Natsu and Gajeel to meet him at the castle after they helped finish off the Thunder God tribe. He disappeared as the two set off, frustrated by his sudden exit. Naruto reappeared inside the palace and called out to Laxus. Laxus' confident smirk briefly showed a flicker of unease before he resumed his arrogant posture, boasting that he had always been superior and that Naruto could not beat him despite all his power. Naruto chuckled and explained that what Laxus was seeing was not simple energy. He vanished and reappeared behind Laxus, taunting that this form could take out several members of the 10 wizard saints at once. Laxus backed away and then noticed Mystigan arriving. Naruto sensed the magic from the lacrimas embedded in the weapons Mystigan carried. Naruto asked Mystigan what he was doing there. Mystigan replied that he had intended to confront Laxus but saw the situation under control. Naruto warned that there were lacrimas in the sky that could threaten the whole town and ordered Mystigan to alert the guild and have them destroy the lacrimas. Mystigan nodded and ran out to warn the others, cloak streaming behind him. Laxus laughed mockingly and tried to argue that no one would attack the lacrimas if told they would be harmed, but Naruto expressed confidence that people would risk themselves to save friends and the town. Laxus' smugness faded into a scowl as he prepared an attack to stop Mystigan from warning everyone. He unleashed his magic, but Naruto flew in front of the blast and took the hit, emerging unscathed. Laxus, shaken, asked what Naruto was, and Naruto replied that he could be called a demon. Natsu and Gajeel had run through the chaos to reach the palace, having battled fiercely to get there. Gajeel grumbled about Naruto's antics as they arrived to find Laxus and Naruto already engaged. Naruto stood on the ceiling, having deactivated his Bijou mode and settled into Sage mode. He signaled that he had drained some of Laxus' magical energy and that Natsu and Gajeel could take a shot at him. Laxus scoffed at the idea of leaving the pair to fight and taunted them. Naruto declared that although they might not be as strong as Laxus now, one day they would surpass him. Natsu and Gajeel were astonished to hear Naruto express that faith in them. Gajeel accepted the unlikely team-up with a wry remark and cracked his knuckles. Natsu fired himself up, and the two launched a coordinated assault. Natsu released his Fire Dragon's Roar while Gajeel used his Iron Dragon's Roar. The two elements combined into a destructive volley that struck the ground, shrouding the area in smoke. Gajeel emerged from the smoke and transformed his arm into an iron club, striking Laxus sharply. Natsu burst from the smoke and delivered a sudden low kick to Laxus's lower torso. Natsu followed with a Fire Dragon's Claw attack that left Laxus struggling to recover, prompting Naruto to scold him for wobbling around. Laxus retaliated with a flurry of attacks. He unleashed a Lightning Dragon's Roar that struck Gajeel and sent him flying. Natsu charged, but Laxus leaped and countered with a spinning kick that knocked Natsu back. Natsu pushed himself up, wiping his face and preparing to continue the fight. Gajeel hardened his skin into iron scales and attempted a powerful punch, but Laxus slipped past it, grabbed Gajeel, and struck him with a knee to the midsection, denting the armor over his abdomen. Natsu seized the opening and launched Crimson Lotus, Fire Dragon Fists, delivering a rapid barrage of explosive punches that sent Laxus crashing into a wall. Gajeel extended his arm again into an iron club and smashed into Laxus, sending him through a wall. Laxus barreled through more debris and collided with Natsu, who was thrown against another wall. Laxus followed up by striking Gajeel and kicking Natsu before charging up for another major attack. Naruto moved to intervene, but Gajeel staggered back into place and took the incoming blow, urging Natsu to finish the fight before collapsing from exhaustion. Natsu rose, furious and determined. A sudden fist struck him, and he answered with Crimson Lotus, exploding flame blade, concentrating the last of his magic into spiraling torrents of flame as he launched his counterattack. Each connecting strike generated a powerful, burning explosion that sent Laxus off his feet and into the ceiling, cracking it. Natsu collapsed to the ground, his magic spent. Laxus hit the floor hard and lay there, exhausted, before pulling himself up slowly and beginning to gather magic for one last blow aimed at the man who had nearly defeated him. Just before he released the torrent, Naruto stepped between them and shoved Laxus's arms aside, diverting the lightning away from the pink-haired man. Naruto told Laxus that he would only make things worse if he pushed further and that he still cared for him, even if Laxus considered him an enemy. Naruto reminded him that they had been friends long ago, even if Laxus denied it now. In a flashback, Makarov walked toward a young blonde boy who was waiting for the fireworks at the festival to begin. The boy greeted his grandfather and asked who the other child was. Makarov introduced the boy as Naruto and said he might join the guild someday. Laxus, cheerful and eager, greeted Naruto, but his grin faded when he noticed Naruto hiding behind his small grandfather. Laxus reassured the shy boy that he would not be hurt, and Makarov encouraged Naruto that he could trust him. Naruto stepped forward with a shy hello. Laxus happily pulled Naruto along to watch the fireworks, eager to share the moment. Makarov watched the two of them in awe before smiling. That was the day their friendship began. Back in the present, Naruto reminded Laxus of what their grandfather had said, that Laxus was someone he could trust. Naruto insisted he knew Laxus well enough to believe that Laxus still cared about their friends deep down. Laxus stared at him, torn between his feelings and his fear for the guild's reputation. He could not let Fairy Tail fall. Naruto pleaded with him not to go through with his plan. After a long silence and a rush of emotions, Laxus sighed and yielded. He conceded, saying he would stop, but only because Naruto was his best friend. Naruto chuckled and reminded him that best friends were supposed to keep each other alive and occasionally beat each other up, at least that was how he understood it. Laxus laughed openly for the first time in a long while and called Naruto an idiot in a teasing tone. Naruto insisted he understood perfectly, and then the two of them shared a light, familiar exchange that eased the tension. The festival had started, and it seemed as if no one remembered the events that had happened, but one person remembered them quite well despite the merriment around him. Laxus walked out of the room after having been recently excommunicated from the guild. Naruto stood in the doorway, having heard everything that had gone on. Naruto called Laxus by name from the threshold, and Laxus replied that he would be seeing him. Naruto sighed and extended his hand for a parting gesture. Laxus accepted the handshake and, together, they turned away to conceal the tears that had sprung to their eyes. Laxus muttered to himself that he was a fool. Night fell, and Naruto still had not celebrated. Suddenly, he felt as if something tugged at him. It was the leaf he had given to Sasuke. Sasuke waited impatiently on the training field as Naruto teleported to where he stood. Naruto appeared and greeted Sasuke cheerfully. Sasuke insisted that the final exam was in a month and that he needed Naruto to train him. Naruto told him not to be so impatient and then instructed him to make shadow clones so they could be split into groups. Naruto planned to teach a new form of the Rasengan. Sasuke grinned in anticipation and created about 60 clones, eager to begin. Nami found a quiet spot atop the Hokage monument, a place of peace where she could sort her thoughts. Naruto approached and surprised her, and Nami asked what he wanted, annoyed at his intrusion. Naruto explained that he had come to think. He revealed that the spot had once been his when he had been in Konoha, but he had left because of personal reasons. Nami asked what those reasons were, and Naruto answered that his parents had ignored him in favor of his siblings and that the village had mistreated him, which had driven him away. Nami's eyes widened at the similarity of their stories. She apologized for earlier behavior, explaining that her parents only talked about a child named Naruto and had given her no attention. She admitted she had felt as if she could have died and no one would have cared. Naruto listened in silence and then whispered that his name was also Naruto. Nami reacted in shock, then watched as he disappeared before she could say more. She stared at the empty spot, stunned to learn that he was the same Naruto who had disappeared and caused her parents so much worry. She resolved to find him later and ask questions. Later, Naruto lay across a tree branch, not as comfortable as the one he knew in Fairy Tail but familiar enough he was used to settling wherever he could. Sasuke rested on another branch nearby, trying to fall asleep because he had been instructed to do so by Fire Shadow, though he did not understand how that would make him stronger. Suddenly Sasuke heard someone call Naruto's name, and his thoughts churned. Naruto was the name of the fourth Hokage's child who had run away. Nami and Fire Shadow were arguing quietly below, prompting Sasuke to sneak forward until Fire Shadow called him out. Fire Shadow scolded Nami for being loud, and Nami shot back that it was not her fault. Sasuke asked impatiently what was going on, and they denied anything was happening, telling him to go back to sleep. Sasuke pressed them, pointing out their obvious lie. Naruto then confessed that his name was Naruto and that he was the fourth Hokage's son. Sasuke's breath caught at the revelation and he asked what Naruto meant. Naruto admitted that he was the one who had run away and that he hated his father, which was why he had left. Sasuke suggested telling their father, but Naruto cut him off and rejected the idea. They sat quietly after that, unaware that Minato Namikaze stood watching them from a distance. Minato stood on the verge of tears, overwhelmed by regret. He knew his remorse would not change anything. He had even killed his own sensei. Only a psychopath would do that, and he feared he might be one himself. He watched through the crystal ball, weighing his options and unable to imagine confronting Naruto after everything he had done. He slammed his fist into the desk, cracking the wood, and cursed under his breath. Naruto listened as Nami declared that she wanted to come with him to train. He sighed inwardly at the frequency with which children begged to train under him. He reluctantly agreed and told her to go away in a firm but exasperated tone. Nami smiled and ran off happily. Naruto then muttered that this was the problem of becoming a powerful shinobi. All the kids wanted him to teach them. Sasuke smirked and tried to sleep on an uncomfortable tree branch. Naruto called to him to get up and go find Nami. Sasuke grumbled about the bright light and muttered an insult toward it. Naruto heard him and responded with a scolding, and Sasuke shot back with another insult before both fell into the easy banter that had become routine. Naruto then addressed Nami as the second of his charges and asked whether she knew the shadow clone technique. Nami looked unsure but said she could do it and asked why she needed it. Naruto explained that each clone gained experience and memories that would return to the original when the clone was dispersed, making training much faster. Nami nodded and formed the hand seals, and as expected for an Uzumaki, many clones appeared. Naruto created a few clones to start her on the Rasengan and then moved to check Sasuke's progress. Naruto noticed a strange marking on Sasuke's shoulder and pointed it out. Sasuke immediately covered it and insisted it was nothing and that he should be left to train. Naruto replied that the mark was not harmless and warned that it could bind Sasuke to Orochimaru. Sasuke snapped that it only gave power and demanded to be left alone. Naruto argued that though the mark granted strength, the cost was loss of freedom, and he asked whether Sasuke wanted that. Sasuke answered that if it helped him kill his brother he did not care what it meant, and he accused Naruto of not understanding. Naruto listened and then revealed that he did understand the desire for revenge. He quietly admitted that he had also wanted vengeance, but he had learned that revenge could not outweigh everything else in life. Sasuke stared in shock, unable to reconcile Naruto's calm with the intensity of his own hatred. Sasuke asked how Naruto had freed his mind from revenge, and Naruto admitted that he had not completely abandoned it. Instead, Naruto explained that he had kept his desire for justice high but chosen to enjoy life in the time before he could pursue that revenge. Sasuke, thoughtful and searching for a way to change, asked Naruto to teach him how to find that enjoyment. Naruto laughed at first and then said that he could not teach Sasuke to find joy directly. Sasuke would have to discover that for himself. He told Sasuke to meditate and promised that he would remove the mark when he could, but explained that he had other business to attend to at the moment. Sasuke sat down to meditate, struggling with the idea of finding happiness when his family had been taken from him. He could not imagine much to enjoy after the attack that wiped out the Uchiha clan. A feminine voice interrupted his thoughts. Nami approached and noted that he seemed flushed, wondering if he had a fever. Sasuke felt hot and his stomach churned, which he assumed must be something he had eaten. Nami reminded everyone that Naruto had said they could go eat ramen and cheerfully pulled Sasuke along. Sasuke resisted, saying he did not want to go, but Nami insisted that he was coming. As she pulled him, Sasuke felt an unfamiliar warmth and a flutter he had not experienced in a long time. At first he thought it was merely the heat or something he had eaten, but then he realized the feeling had another source. In that small, shared moment, he discovered a simple pleasure he had been missing, the quiet comfort of companionship and ordinary life. Naruto walked into the fourth Hokage's office without bothering to knock. Minato put on a fake smile and straightened as Naruto approached. Naruto told Minato he knew the Hokage had seen him speak about his identity. Minato's eyes widened, and Naruto explained that he could sense him because a chakra demon had been sealed within him, giving him heightened sensory perception, and because he knew Senjutsu and was part Uzumaki. Minato bowed and begged for forgiveness, apologizing for his prior behavior. Naruto replied coldly that apologies would not restore the person who had pretended to be his real father or undo the torture and wounds he had endured. Minato protested, but Naruto only pointed out how strange it was to see the fourth Hokage on his knees and said that shinobi should not lose their dignity. Before leaving, Naruto warned that if Minato did not have the world's strongest shinobi behind him, he would have killed him then and there. He left and closed the door on the grief-stricken Hokage. Nami sighed and patted her stomach after finishing another bowl of ramen. Sasuke thought that 27 bowls might not be healthy, but he also acknowledged that Naruto had an almost monstrous appetite and was exceptional at nearly everything ninjutsu, taijutsu, and the little tricks the writer had hidden in the world. Sasuke tried to start a conversation and asked Nami what her favorite color was, mentally chiding himself for such a lame opening. Nami answered that it was orange and immediately challenged him to spar to determine who was the better student. Sasuke boasted that he had trained under Naruto longer and that he had the Sharingan. Nami bristled, insisting she was an Uzumaki who would not go down easily. Sasuke suggested they get Naruto to supervise and promised to destroy her. Nami shot back that it would be the other way around. Naruto told them to begin. The two genin formed hand seals and set their techniques in motion. Nami used Shadow Clone Jutsu while Sasuke unleashed a fire-style fireball. Many clones appeared, some were taken down by the fireball. Nami commanded her clones to charge, and they advanced with weapons. Sasuke smirked and created 100 shadow clones to engage the attackers, then ran straight at Nami and launched a fierce taijutsu assault. Nami was outmatched and was knocked out, prompting Sasuke to announce his victory. Naruto shook his head, indicating he did not accept that result. Nami then dispersed in a puff of smoke, revealing she had been a clone. Suddenly, more clones surrounded Sasuke. The clones dissipated into swirling gusts of wind that buffeted Sasuke, sending him flying across the field. He stood up, clearly shaken and furious. Nami revealed that when she had summoned the clones she had replaced herself with one and hidden in the trees. Sasuke countered with a fire-style phoenix flower technique that sent waves of flame toward where Nami had been hiding. The fire struck and propelled her across the field. She rose after being driven back and announced that she would use her newly mastered Rasengan. Sasuke scoffed, and both charged toward one another with their techniques ready. Before their techniques met, Naruto intervened and stopped them. He explained that they had been fighting as if to kill and that he would not allow it. Both of them were forbidden from sparring for a month. He ordered them to the hospital and insisted they get treatment. Reluctantly, the two students followed their sensei, upset but obedient. In the hospital room, Sasuke and Nami watched Naruto leave and then glared at each other. Each claimed superiority. Nami insisted she could defeat Sasuke with a Rasengan, while Sasuke boasted he could dodge it and that his fire techniques were superior to her wind jutsu. They traded sharp retorts about training and family, each confident in their own abilities. They then turned away from each other with secret smiles. Unnoticed, Naruto watched them from the shadows and smiled to himself. Later, he slipped out of the window while they slept and walked to the cemetery. He passed Kakashi, who stood quietly by Obito's grave. Naruto asked Kakashi if he could take Nami and Sasuke out to train them, and Kakashi agreed, saying it would give them experience and strength and warning Naruto not to kill them. Naruto walked to his own sensei's grave and offered a brief prayer, telling his fallen teacher that he had new students carrying on the legacy and that he would be leaving for Fairy Tail in a few days but would return. He finished his prayer and walked out of the cemetery. In 3 days, Sasuke and Nami would be discharged and would go to Fairy Tail to get their tattoos. 3 days later, Sasuke and Nami ran out of the hospital, planning to return home to pack their things. Naruto had already explained their plan. They felt more excited than they had at any other time in their lives, eager to meet the people who might finally give them the sense of family they had always wanted. Naruto called out that they were heading out now and to hurry up. The group hurried toward the door. Izumo shouted that they should stay safe, and Kotetsu voiced his agreement. Nami waved and assured everyone that they would be fine, while Sasuke smirked. Naruto then urged the group to get to Fairy Tail, and Nami cheered in response. With that, Team Fire Shadow departed to meet the people who had saved their sensei's life. Naruto, Sasuke, and Nami arrived at the guild building. Nami stared in awe at the large structure, trembling with excitement at how impressive it looked. Sasuke urged them to hurry, impatient to get inside. They entered to find a scuffle already underway. Two mages traded barbs and immediately knocked each other out. Sasuke and Nami exchanged exasperated looks while Naruto moved forward to speak with the guild master about the plans involving them. Makarov greeted them, cheerfully asking for Sasuke and Nami before promising that they would receive their official guild tattoos. Sasuke muttered that his name was not Sasuke. Makarov, having trouble hearing, asked him to speak up. Sasuke insisted loudly that his name was not Sasuke, drawing everyone's attention and flushing with embarrassment. Naruto chuckled as Sasuke glared and then followed Makarov to find Mirajin. Nami excitedly showed off her tattoo, which she had chosen to place on her forearm in orange, while Naruto barely paid attention and she scolded him for it. Sasuke sighed. He had chosen to put his tattoo on his back, just under the Uchiha crest on his shirt, and had tied a shinobi headband around his bicep above the leaf symbol. Later, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Natsu, Gray, Happy, Lucy, and Erza arrived at the meeting place. Naruto's expression turned to alarm, and the others immediately sensed that something was wrong. A flamboyant group entered, performing a cheeky song and announcing themselves as the Blue Pegasus Elite Crew, the Triads. They made exaggerated, flirtatious displays and fawned over Lucy and Erza, which irritated Natsu and Naruto. A short man in a white tuxedo stepped down the stairs, addressing Erza with overly familiar compliments and flipping his hair in an obvious show. Erza trembled in discomfort. Naruto moved forward and attempted to send the man toward the doorway, but a fighter intervened and restrained Naruto with an ice technique. The newcomer demanded respect for Lamia scale, and everyone recognized the white-haired man as Lion. Gray reacted in shock at Lion's presence, and Natsu greeted him with his usual enthusiasm. Lion shoved the short man aside, who mumbled incoherently under the ice. Suddenly a carpet moved as if animated, and Lucy slipped before regaining her balance. She recognized the magic as a puppetry spell. A pink-haired woman named Sherry had used a marionette technique called Perfect Doll, and she appeared with a nervous laugh, claiming she had changed and been reborn in a new way, blushing slightly at the admission. The mood remained tense as Uchiha attempted to get close to Erza, professing admiration, and Erza pushed him back with her spear to keep him at a distance. The teams braced for a fight. A tall, bald man in pharaonic attire strode forward and slammed his pole into the floor to call for calm, reminding everyone that they were gathered to work together against Oration Cease. Jura's authority quieted the room as people exchanged updates. Naruto approached Jura, poked at his pack and teased him, which earned a gruff warning in response. Jura noted that the member from Kate's shelter had not yet arrived. Uchiha mentioned that only one member was expected, which surprised Erza and alarmed Gray, who pointed out that they needed more strength to face such a powerful group. Naruto laughed and advised Gray that he still had much to learn, explaining that some fighters could carry battles on their own and naming himself and Gildarts as examples. Sherry watched him with a puzzled expression. A woman laughed and called it a joke. Jura stepped forward and stopped her, warning that he was stronger than all of them combined and should not be underestimated. The woman replied with a light-hearted thanks to Jane. Jura added another tick mark before turning toward the doorway, just as a small blue-haired girl tripped and fell forward. Naruto's eyes bulged as he tried to stifle his laughter. The girl winced and stood up, apologizing for arriving late and explaining that she had come from the Kate Shelter Guild. The girl introduced herself as Wendy and then repeated her name, saying it was nice to meet everyone. Lucy reacted in shock, exclaiming that Wendy was a child. Lion muttered that she looked like a little girl. Natsu murmured Wendy's name to himself, wondering where he had heard it before. Sasuke found himself staring at the girl as the guilds chased after Natsu. Suddenly Nami smacked him and hissed that he should stop staring. Sasuke snapped that he could not help it, and Nami trailed off uncertainly. Explosions suddenly tore through the sky. The Christina, the ship sailing overhead, began to fall apart. More explosions erupted within its hull until it detonated again in a much larger blast. Smoke and fire rose from the ruins and everyone watched in shocked silence. Lion observed that this did not bode well. Naruto's nose twitched and Gray announced that they had company, urging everyone to stay alert. The guilds took battle positions as a man emerged from the smoke. He had red hair and a purple snake wrapped around him that reminded Naruto of a certain sannin. More figures followed. A man carrying a book, a girl with white hair, a man with a yellow mohawk, a muscular man in a white vest, and a person with black hair and lipstick who was, in fact, a boy. All the members of the Oration Cease stepped forward and cast sneering taunts at the gathered mages, belittling them and warning that the short-statured guilds would not make it far. Naruto recognized the white-haired girl as a celestial mage and questioned her about it. She replied arrogantly that of course she was, dismissing him as low life. The insult hit Naruto, and he answered with a low, dangerous growl that made his voice go dark and his eyes take on a sharp, slitted red as he released a burst of ki. The girl ignored the killing intent, but the pressure around Naruto grew heavier, colder, and full of malice. Images of violence and destruction rushed into her mind, and she began to shake as the oppressive force intensified. Even the rest of Oration Cease felt the shift. The presence was menacing and hateful. Someone called Naruto's name, and his eyes returned to their usual sky blue as Kurama appeared within him, urging him not to let hatred take hold and reminding him that he had friends and allies beside him. Naruto forced a smile and thanked Kurama, though the tailed fox could tell it was not entirely sincere. Kurama withdrew, leaving Naruto steadier and the killer intent dissipated. With the threat of that overwhelming hatred gone, the Oration Cease regained their composure and arrogance. The Mohawk challenger boasted about being the fastest and charged toward Naruto. Naruto taunted back and proposed taking on both him and the white-haired girl at once. The Mohawked man surged forward, but Naruto vanished from sight to the surprise of everyone except the fairy tale mages. Naruto then declared that he would test the speed of the Mohawked man and, turning to the girl, challenged whose spirits were stronger. He called on Kurama. A massive demon fox erupted from Naruto, roaring and radiating power that made nearby mages stare in a mix of fear and awe. The white-haired girl summoned Gemini, and the two spirits transformed, confronting Kurama. Kurama formed a focused blast and launched it. The attack collided with Gemini in a dramatic explosion felt across the battlefield. The girl's brother collapsed, exhausted, unable to recreate that level of attack. Kurama observed that not every effective attack came from magic, and the siblings vanished as the girl fell to her knees. Kurama fixed her with a stern, intimidating glance that subdued her like a scolding parent. The Mohawked man was sent tumbling into a tree and crashed through it. Naruto admitted that the girl's idea had been clever but insisted he was still faster. He then addressed the assembled guild members, announcing that they could engage the Oration Cease to gain experience while he watched from the sidelines. Natsu cheered that he was fired up and charged forward. The guilds rushed the Oration Cease and soon sounds of struggle and yells of pain echoed across the field. After the skirmish, Naruto chastised the guilds for rushing in without a plan and urged them to formulate one before attacking. He set about using Kurama's chakra to mend wounds and help the hurt mages recover. The triad members argued over names and teased one another until Naruto intervened with a firm, comical reprimand that left them sprawled and subdued on the ground. Naruto checked on Urza, who had been bitten by the snake and poisoned. He used Kurama's chakra to draw out nearly all the venom and tended her wound. As he moved closer, he noticed Urza's flushed face and asked if she felt warm. He offered a light, teasing comment and leaned in to whisper something private and playful. The remark was innocent and meant to put her at ease, but Urza found herself blushing and confused by the sudden attention. Naruto gave her a friendly wink and walked away, leaving her to sort through her thoughts. Naruto Uzumaki, age 19, nickname Fire Shadow. Appearance and basics. Naruto is a muscular young man with blonde hair, blue eyes, and distinctive whisker markings on his face. He stands 5 feet 5 inches and weighs 50.9 kilograms. He was born on October. He is human. Personality. Naruto is kind but can be stern when necessary. He has a quick sense of humor and shows a fierce, determined side when extremely angry. He values his friends, his guild, his sensei, and his students above all. He trains constantly and enjoys talking with friends. He fears not being strong enough to protect those he cares about. He is willing to do anything for his friends. Background and affiliations. Parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Siblings, Taisuke, Mito, Nami. Clan, Uzumaki and Namikaze. The Uzumaki were once a powerful clan that separated from the Senju. They were eventually driven from their homeland and scattered across the world. Birth village, Hidden Leaf Village. Current village, none. Occupation, mage of fairy tale. Ambition, none specified. Rivals and enemies. He has no established rival yet, but regards anyone who hurts his friends or attacks his guild as an enemy. Abilities and skills. Special powers include the ability to call upon all 9-tailed beasts using celestial spirit keys and to perform a tailed beast fusion that grants him full access to their chakra and a distinct golden and black appearance. Chakra elements: wind, lava, magnet, boil, lightning, earth, water, and fire. Skill ratings. Ninjutsu, ninja techniques 10-10. Genjutsu, illusion techniques 4-10. Taijutsu, martial arts techniques 10-10. Kekkei Genkai, bloodline traits 6-10. Dojutsu I techniques 0-10. Kinjutsu, forbidden techniques 8-10. Fuinjutsu, sealing techniques 10-10. Mission and combat attributes. Accuracy, 9-10. Weaponry, 8-10. Stealth, 10-10. Speed, 10-10. Traps, 8-10. Tracking, 10-10. Chakra control, 10-10. Analytical. Skills, 9-10. Strategy, 8-10. Leadership, 9-10. Weapons and gear. Naruto carries a spring-loaded kunai holster, weights, visible restriction seals he only releases when necessary, scrolls for tools, and sometimes a short sword. He wears a metal fairy tale headband. Clans and Kekkei Genkai. Kekkei Genkai, lava release, magnet release, and boil release. Bijou, tailed beasts, all 9-tailed beasts. Appearance and outfits. Everyday outfit. A fox mask he sometimes wears in public, an orange hooded sweatshirt, Umbu Special Forces style pants, black calf-high boots or sandals, weights, visible restriction seals, and occasionally a red cloak with a black flame design on the edges. Mission outfit. A simple chest guard with clipped-on shoulder pads and a high collar, Umbu-style pants, black calf-high boots or sandals, the kunai holster, a short sword on his back, black sleeves with metal plating over the forearms, a fox mask, and the fairy tale metal headband. He also sometimes wears a red cloak with a black flame design on the edges and carries scrolls with needed items. Traits and miscellany. Theme songs. To Glory by 2 Steps from Hell, Protectors of Earth by 2 Steps from Hell, Racketeers by 2 Steps from Hell. Favorites and personal notes. Likes. Friends, ramen, his guild, his sensei, his students, and training. Dislikes. The village that wronged his clan, his biological parents' absence, those who hurt his loved ones, and greedy people. Hobbies. Training and talking with friends. Strengths. Intelligence and raw power. Weaknesses. He would do anything for his friends. Favorite food, any type of ramen. Favorite color, orange. Favorite number, personal motto. Naruto's Nindo is to never give up and to keep going. Romantic interest. He has a possible crush on Urza. Notes on style. His fighting style and abilities combine powerful ninjutsu and taijutsu with sealing techniques and strategic leadership, making him a formidable mage and protector of his guild. A medic admitted that he could not extract all of the poison. The other guild members reacted with alarm. Naruto explained that the poison would continue to consume her and eventually kill her in a few days. He clarified that they could not remove her arm and none of the tailed beast healing powers had worked, so the immediate plan was to save Wendy and Happy and bring them to Urza so she could be helped. Naruto added that he would leave a shadow clone with Urza if she were attacked, and that the rest of them needed to go rescue Wendy and Happy. Naruto leaped through the trees while Ibiki, one of the triads, and Lucy stayed behind with Urza. He detected other people nearby and noted that he already sensed their base. He called out for Wendy and Happy, saying he needed them to help Urza. After a few moments, someone stepped forward. One of the figures warned Naruto that yelling was unwise, addressing him as the tailed beast host. The newcomer had orange hair, purple eyes, and multiple piercings. Naruto reacted with derision and identified the newcomer as Pain, the infamous leader of the Akatsuki. 5 more figures descended from the sky, each with orange hair, piercings, and purple eyes. Naruto observed that they appeared to be the different paths of the ringed eye power. Naruto immediately prepared an attack, wrapping golden flames over his hand and torso and initiating a tailed beast fusion at level 1. The Pain figures leapt into the air and began to run. Naruto chased after them and caught up easily. He formed a magnet-style Rasengan and launched himself at them, but the attack was abruptly absorbed. Anticipating their next move, he held his position. The opponents used a gravity-based technique to disrupt Naruto's movement. He concentrated chakra in his feet to resist being pulled and saw chakra arms reaching for nearby objects to hold him in place. At the same time, large animals with the ringed eyes and piercings were summoned to engage him. Naruto responded by creating more chakra arms to keep the summons at bay. When the gravity technique subsided, he produced 9 keys. He pricked his finger, touched each key with the small drop of blood, and activated a series of gates one by one. The 9-tailed beasts emerged, each transformed and imposing. Kurama emitted golden chakra instead of having visible fur. Gyuki displayed protective plating across its body. Chomei bore iron-like armor and wings. Saiken radiated steam-like chakra. Kokuo had a single horn with fur and skin shifted to a fiery orange. Son Goku carried enlarged fangs and bone-like spikes. Isabu was surrounded by blue fire. Matatabi rose on hind legs carrying a blade of blue flame chakra. Shikaku had transformed from a raccoon-like form into a sand dragon marked by seals. The tailed beasts acknowledged their renewed strength and fixed their attention on the Akatsuki. Naruto's golden chakra dispersed into each of the beasts, with the 9 tails receiving the largest share. Son Goku murmured that it felt good to be back, especially with chakra refilled, and the other beasts nodded in agreement. Kokuo asked if these were the leaders of the Akatsuki and whether they intended to take the beasts. The tailed beasts agreed they would fight to destroy their foes. From a distance, Nagato observed the scene through the eyes of Yahiko, whose body served as the Deva path. Nagato thought that the situation would be easier now that their enemies had come to face them. 8 members of the Akatsuki emerged from the trees, each wearing a black cloak with red clouds and rings with characters on them. They charged toward the tailed beasts in pairs, leaving Pain to confront Naruto. Naruto smirked and dismissed the idea that even S-ranked shinobi could handle the strongest of the elemental village's beasts. The Pain figures formed a formation to coordinate their assault. Naruto bit his finger, contacted the ground with his hand, and performed a summoning technique that called forth 3 huge armored toads roughly the size of Shikaku. He directed the toads to take down the other summoned creatures and demonstrate their power. One of the large toads drew a sword and leaped into the fray with its comrades. Turning back to face Pain, Naruto's appearance shifted. His eyes were no longer sky blue but golden with narrow pupils, orange markings surrounding them, and he donned a red cloak. He signaled that it was time to punish their attackers and prepared to engage fully. Across the clearing, flames and chakra clashed, and opponents were sent tumbling, singed and stunned as the battle intensified. Naruto remained focused on protecting his friends and defeating the Akatsuki while his summons and the tailed beasts pressed the attack in coordinated, high-energy confrontations that felt like a dramatic anime-style spectacle. The Akatsuki stepped back in nervousness. The killing intent directed at them was so immense that even Itachi had to steady himself to remain standing. Naruto warned that they would pay with their lives. Naruto vanished and reappeared behind Deidara, striking him with a chakra-enhanced blow that shattered the puppet's control and put him out of the fight. The Deva Path puppet raised its arms and activated a universal pull-and-push technique. Naruto disappeared again and returned with a great spiral sphere, slamming it into the Deva Path puppet and sending it flying. He then closed on another puppet and engaged it in fierce close-quarters combat until a chakra arm formed another spiral sphere and struck the puppet, disabling it. Naruto declared that, now their leader was gone, it was time to deal with the rest. Hayden lunged at the chakra-encased shinobi, but Naruto smashed Hayden's weapon to pieces with a focused strike. Naruto said that followers of Jashin needed to calm down, then formed a lava-infused spiral shuriken and unleashed it, overwhelming Hayden and neutralizing him. Naruto turned and moved towards Sasori. He produced 100 shadow clones, each bearing a spiral sphere, and the clones bombarded the puppet user until the puppet's central mechanism was destroyed and it ceased to function. Naruto then appeared behind Itachi and kicked him towards Sasuke. Naruto ordered Sasuke to tell the truth about his actions, facing the remaining Akatsuki with an emotionless voice and face as he vowed to purge their blood with his own hands. Kisame pleaded for Itachi to come back, calling him a traitor, but Itachi was already gone. The remaining members of the Akatsuki shivered in fear. Naruto formed a small, dark condensed ball of chakra and concentrated until the air around them wavered under the pressure. He moved his hand forward and unleashed a tailed beast bomb. A blinding flash filled the clearing, and when it subsided, the jutsu along with Naruto's tailed beast chakra had vanished. Sasuke stared at his older brother, the man responsible for their clan's massacre. He had long fantasized about killing him, but now he did not know what to say. Itachi winced as the oppressive pressure rose. Even if they had moved away to avoid the battle, the intensity could still be felt. Itachi told Sasuke that he did not blame him for hating him and that Sasuke could even kill him if he wished, but that Itachi had always loved him and had kept him alive to make him stronger, a harsh, twisted lesson that Itachi described as the training session they had never had. Sasuke looked up in shocked disbelief, calling the idea of that training session quietly to himself. He managed a real smile before turning away as small droplets fell from his face. Itachi smiled and said they had better return to Naruto. Sasuke agreed, acknowledging that their teacher might be the strongest person he knew, but he was not invincible. When Itachi raised an eyebrow at the title sensei, Sasuke explained that their teacher had taught him nearly everything he knew, that Sasuke was his first and favored student, and that the teacher had another pupil who was his sister. Itachi nodded, and the two ran off to find Naruto. Kisame laughed, mocking their diminishing power. Naruto laughed in reply and reminded them that he would not let anyone get away with hurting his friends. He activated Sage Mode and launched himself at Kisame, employing fox-style close-quarters chakra fists as red chakra fire coated his hands. Kisame was burned by the chakra and leapt back, forming hand seals to summon a massive water assault filled with countless feeding sharks. Naruto formed shadow clones to hold the wave and Kisame at bay while he drew and focused a tremendous amount of chakra. As the last clone dispersed, he stood and performed the tailed beast black lightning technique. The attack struck Kisame and Kazu with unnatural black lightning. The bolts overwhelmed them and neutralized both threats, their forms dispersing as the technique finished. Naruto fell to one knee as Sasuke and Itachi ran up to him. Naruto panted that he was glad they had made it and asked where his sister was. Sasuke searched frantically and reported that their teacher was not present. Naruto cursed, realizing where the purple-haired Akatsuki member had gone. He tried to stand but stumbled from exhaustion. Itachi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and urged him to rest. Naruto pushed back angrily, insisting he needed to retrieve Nami. Itachi held firm and ordered him to rest, but Naruto muttered in frustration. Sasuke volunteered to go. Naruto stared at him, reminding him that he would be facing the leader of the Akatsuki, someone even Naruto had difficulty defeating. Sasuke argued that Naruto had not gone all out and reminded them that Naruto had promised never to use his full power unless the world was in danger. Sasuke begged again to be allowed to go after Nami. Naruto growled no, but Sasuke protested that he was not the weak kid he had been and that his Sage Mode was improving. Naruto sighed and, reluctantly, gave permission, calling him a stupid brat as Sasuke smiled and ran off. Naruto muttered that he was a fool. Sasuke ran through the trees and gathered a bit of nature chakra to sense both the Akatsuki leader and Nami. He reached out through a tree and stepped into a hidden space. Inside, he heard a threat to kill the girl if anyone moved. He found a purple-haired woman with a kunai pressed to Nami's throat and saw the figure of a man with the ominous circular eye pattern nearby. Sasuke concluded that the man was the leader. Sasuke told them that all he wanted was his friend and that he would leave afterward. The leader asked for clarification about the word friend. Sasuke affirmed his intent. Sasuke stated that she was his friend and that he wanted her back. Nagato, the gaunt Rinnegan wielder, laughed raspily and declared himself a god, insisting he would never give her up. Konan watched him with worry and began to say his name but fell silent. Sasuke said he only wanted to take her peacefully. Nagato replied that there would be no peace until he completed the demonic statue of the outer path. Sasuke insisted there could be peace and that his sensei, Naruto Uzumaki, the fire shadow, would achieve it and that not even Nagato could stop him. Nagato stared with curiosity and asked Sasuke to tell him about Naruto. Sasuke agreed to tell everything he knew, took a deep breath, and prepared to begin the story of Naruto. Sasuke leapt through the trees and gaped at the scene. All of the tailed beasts were fighting shinobi in black and red cloaks. Nami ran past him, ignoring the chaos. She called to her older brother. Sasuke hurried to her and saw Naruto engaged in intense close-quarters combat, but something about him felt different. Sasuke addressed their teacher in confusion. Naruto used sage power to kick the puppet away and pulled back, warning them that this battle was on a completely different level from the ones they had faced. While Naruto was momentarily distracted, a sharpened chakra pole struck his chest and he collapsed, unmoving. Kurama had never been this angry. The Akatsuki were irritating him. If only they could stay still, it would be easier. He then noticed an explosion to the right near his brother Shikaku and panicked as the blast wrapped around Tanuki. His other siblings reacted in alarm, their movements becoming erratic. An Earth-style assault erupted from beneath the ground, and a surge of black flames surged outward. Hundreds of clones burst up from the earth, each with fish-like features, and slammed into the flaming Matatabi with a variety of techniques. Matatabi was thrown into the air and then crashed back down, still alight from the black flames. Kurama watched in desperation as one by one his brothers and sister fell, and he found himself driven back as well. Sasuke and Nami watched in despair as Naruto reeled and fell to his knees. One of the Pains sneered that he had never expected the famed fire shadow to be so weak. Sasuke clenched his hands, furious at the insult to his teacher and the brother he had always wanted. Before Sasuke could act, Naruto smirked and vanished. A Rasengan then slammed into the Pain who had struck him, knocking that opponent back. Naruto declared that the tailed beasts would be used to bring about peace. One of the Pains announced that peace would be achieved by their plan. Naruto responded by condemning the destruction and vowing to stop them and protect his friends. The Akatsuki landed beside the Pains, and Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he recognized Itachi among them. Naruto's anger flared as the Akatsuki launched themselves at him. He produced clones to hold them off while he enacted his plan and sought the tailed beast's aid. He called on Kurama, Shika, Yuki, Matatabi, and the others for help and concentrated until he was transported to a sewer-like chamber with the tailed beasts gathered around him. Kurama warned that they could only lend chakra briefly because of the chakra rods embedded in them. Still, their combined chakra formed a golden fire that flowed into Naruto and returned him to the battle. The golden chakra spread across his body in a form unlike the first-level fusion. He opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on the cloaked shinobi before him, having activated the second-level tailed beast fusion. Sasuke told the story of Naruto's past, saying that Naruto had come from what was considered royalty but had never been treated like it. Sasuke explained that nearly everyone had treated Naruto like dirt, as if he were a demon, even his own family. One day Naruto decided to leave, and sometime later he was found by Jiraiya. Sasuke described Jiraiya as sympathetic and as the father figure Naruto had never had, the first source of real joy in his life. Sasuke went on to say that this joy was taken away when the fourth Hokage confronted them and, during the confrontation, struck Jiraiya down. Nagato reacted with surprise and asked if Jiraiya had really been Naruto's sensei. Sasuke confirmed that he had been and added that, from what he had heard, the fourth Hokage could be cruel. He continued that Naruto had felt a rage unlike any other, which somehow triggered powers within him similar in nature to the Uchiha and the Sharingan. Sasuke said that Naruto had summoned the Nine Tails to hold the fourth Hokage off. then fled but fell unconscious from exhaustion. He was later found by people who forced him and others into slavery in a tower. Sasuke recounted that Naruto had revolted with the other slaves and escaped, was found by the master of the fairy tale guild, and joined them, taking the name Fire Shadow to conceal his identity. Nagato mused that Fire Shadow meant the same as Hokage. Sasuke nodded and continued that Naruto had worn a mask out of fear of being found by the fourth Hokage. He had been sent on an S-rank mission with a team and completed it successfully, earning praise for his power, speed, and intelligence. Sasuke said that Naruto soon became known throughout Fiore and the elemental nations, but that power had come at a cost. Some of his friends had been lost, and the rage from those losses drove him to unlock the tailed beast keys. He did not fully understand why he had them, but he was grateful for the strength they gave him to protect others. Nagato muttered to himself about saving them. Sasuke then described how, after one fight, Naruto had met a strange man with red hair and purple eyes wearing rings similar to Nagato's. Nagato reacted with a startled gasp and recognition. Thinking of the Sage of Six Paths, Sasuke admitted he did not know the details of that encounter, only that Naruto had received a new kind of chakra said to be used only if the world were in danger. Something in Nagato's expression softened as he told Sasuke to continue, and Sasuke explained that Naruto had traveled to the elemental nations and built a bounty from 50,000 ryo up to 7 million, becoming widely known as Fire Shadow across both lands. Nagato fell silent and considered the story. Konan began to speak Nagato's name, but Nagato interrupted to declare that he would not attack. Konan stared in surprise and questioned why Nagato would stand down after all their effort. Nagato said that if the sage had spoken to Naruto, then Naruto must be the one to save them all, and even Nagato could not interfere. Konan immediately backed away and accepted his decision. Before leaving, Sasuke gave Konan and Nagato orange leaves as a way to contact him and then slipped away in a swirl of floating leaves. Back with the united guild members, Naruto stood before Urza, Natsu, Gray, and the others, who were stunned by the scale of what he had accomplished. Gray reacted angrily at the revelation that Naruto had defeated a deadly assassin group. Filled with S-rank fighters, including an immortal, a person who seemed to have 5 lives, someone with godlike power, and another whose ability had not been seen in decades. Natsu could only stare in wide-eyed shock at the amount of damage and pressure involved. Urza noted the unexpected magnitude of chakra Naruto had displayed. Naruto admitted that he had gone a little overboard. The battlefield told the same story. Thousands of trees had been toppled, massive craters scarred the land, and the lingering presence of strong chakra hung over the area. Sasuke then appeared and told them that he had convinced Nagato to cease hostilities against them and the tailed beasts. Naruto brightened at the news and assumed Nagato would want to see him. Sasuke confirmed that he had given Nagato the leaves as well. Naruto bid the guild members farewell and, with Sasuke at his side, they vanished, leaving the mages in confused amazement. Naruto later arrived at Nagato's hideout. Nagato confirmed that the man standing before him was Naruto Uzumaki and told Naruto that he would be cutting off his attacks. When Naruto asked why, Nagato replied that the sage's wise words were all the reason he needed. Naruto noticed the equipment and wires attached to Nagato and offered to remove them. Nagato raised an eyebrow and told Naruto to show him. Naruto removed his gloves to reveal a moon symbol on one hand and a sun symbol on the other. He stepped behind Nagato, placed his hands on Nagato's back, and began removing the apparatus. One by one the devices came away and fell to the floor. Nagato, regaining his composure, grasped Naruto's hands and expressed deep gratitude, recognizing Naruto as someone chosen by the sage. Naruto brushed off the praise and rubbed the back of his head. Nagato stood up shakily, stumbled, and then righted himself with a small, unsteady smile that made both Sasuke and Naruto smile. Naruto then told Nagato about a place where he would be accepted, called Fairy Tale, and asked if Nagato had ever heard of it. Nami and Sasuke ended their brutal warm-up 200 push-ups, 100 strikes against stone, 100 kicks, and endless laps around Magnolia. Most would not call it a warm-up, but these shinobi were far from normal. Naruto had recently taken Nagato and Itachi to the guild and was now coaching his students for a few more minutes before the 3rd exam. He instructed them to prepare for sparring and then signaled them to begin. Sasuke and Nami charged at their sensei and launched a coordinated technique. Sasuke formed 2 fire dragons while Nami produced wind dragons that fed and enlarged the flames as they rushed toward Naruto. Naruto responded with a powerful water-style technique, summoning several massive water dragons that swallowed their lesser beasts. Just as the torrent reached them, Sasuke and Nami vanished and reappeared behind a row of trees. Naruto burst through a tree trunk, tackled them, and pinned them with a small blade at their collars in a flashy, theatrical move. Naruto smiled and reminded them that he could sense them easily, declaring his victory. Sasuke and Nami grumbled and rose to their feet. Naruto told them to begin gathering chakra for the entrance. He announced that he planned to make an impressive entrance and began preparing his props and effects, fire bomb and leaves among them. Nami told him to be quiet so they could concentrate. Naruto muttered a teasing comment about the sisters and then joked that he liked one better, prompting Nami to tell him to be quiet. Naruto counted down, and the trio appeared in the middle of the stadium amid a burst of fire and a scatter of leaves, standing back to back. Naruto coolly asked if they had been too late, his hair swaying from an artificial breeze. Sasuke scoffed quietly and dismissed the notion. Nami grinned and crossed her arms. The crowd stared in awe as the 3 strangers materialized. Applause began with a single spectator and quickly grew until the entire stadium clapped as the trio climbed the stairs to the participants' balcony. Naruto asked if that had been impressive as he jabbed Sasuke's ribs with his elbow. Sasuke complained that Naruto should stop ramming his ribs. Kurenai asked Kakashi whether he had 4 students. Kakashi nodded without looking up from the well-worn orange book he always read. Kurenai asked who the blonde-haired newcomer was. Kakashi explained that the newcomer was known as the Fire Shadow and carried a 7 million bounty, and that however he had helped Nami and Sasuke come out of their shells was probably for the best. Kurenai glanced toward the newcomer as he approached. Naruto greeted Kurenai politely and then teased Kakashi with a childish nickname. Kakashi's eye twitched at the name, but he kept reading. Naruto leaned in and told Kakashi that he was planning to write the next book and would give the first copy to Kakashi for being a devoted fan. Kurenai recognized the description of the books Asuma read and her chakra flared in irritation. Naruto backed away nervously. The clash of combat echoed through the arena as the competitors fought. Kakashi watched the next contenders. Nami had overwhelmed Neji in seconds using the shadow clone technique and a barrage of giant spiraling spheres. Naruto expressed confidence that Sasuke would win the next match. They observed the unstable boy and his student exchange blows. Sasuke shattered each sand shield with a spinning sphere technique, and Gaara's attacks only narrowly missed him. Naruto announced that he had to go and then disappeared. He reappeared beside the 4th Hokage just as Orochimaru revealed himself and launched a swift sword strike. Minato reacted in surprise while Naruto coldly stated that he did not like Orochimaru and was intervening only for Nami and for the village. Minato nodded solemnly and readied his distinctive throwing dagger. Orochimaru scowled at the 2 high-level shinobi before him and realized he could not face them both directly. He retreated with his sound 4, but panic set in when the 4th Hokage and the famed Fire Shadow pursued them. Naruto activated the Shadow Clone technique, producing thousands of identical copies. The clones overwhelmed Orochimaru's Sound 4, while the 4th Hokage moved in a blur, striking Orochimaru with a series of rapid, non-lethal blows appearing and disappearing to land precise hits until Orochimaru was forced to fall back. Sasuke and Nami grinned at Gaara and his siblings as they jumped away. Nami said excitedly that Gaara would be making a lot more friends now. Sasuke grunted, though his eyes betrayed that he was happy for the rejected boy. Nami teased Sasuke that he was probably too emo to admit it. Sasuke told her to shut it and called her blonde. Nami pointed out that his best friend and sensei also had blonde hair. Sasuke retorted that Nami's hair looked worse, and they told each other to be quiet. The guild doors were kicked open as Naruto strode in with his students. Naruto announced his arrival and the room greeted him before returning to their activities. Natsu challenged Naruto to a fight, flames flaring, but Naruto knocked him to the ground and said he was going to eat his ramen in peace. Naruto scanned the crowd and smiled when he saw Yuya talking happily to Mira. Naruto realized a shadow clone must have learned her name and asked Mira for 26 bowls. Mira agreed and winked toward Tayuya. Naruto wondered why. Naruto called to Tayuya. Tayuya stuttered a shy greeting and tried to thank him, then brushed it off with a muttered complaint about apologies. Naruto peered over a bowl of ramen and asked what she had said, and she dismissed it. Natsu tried to rile Naruto again and was slammed down a second time. Naruto insisted he was not old and refused to fight while eating ramen, warning Natsu he would get a beating. Natsu said Wendy would heal him now that she was in the guild. Naruto joked that he would kill him. Natsu joked back that Nagato would revive him. Nagato then appeared behind Naruto and asked if he really meant it. Naruto affirmed that he did. Sasuke told Naruto to calm down, and Naruto snapped back about calming Sasuke instead. Sasuke complained that Naruto's bright hair was blocking his hearing, and Naruto agreed with a jab about Nami's hair. Before the spat continued, Nami sprang up and punched both Sasuke and Naruto through the roof. Everyone stared as a green ogre popped through the window in surprise and confusion. Bells began to ring while Wendy, Lucy, and Carla looked on puzzled. Carla and Wendy recognized the sound as bells. Elfman raised a fist in cheer and Gray declared it awesome. The guild realized that Guildarts had returned and began to celebrate and prepare drinks. Lucy asked who Guildarts was. Naruto said Guildarts was the strongest person in Fairy Tail after himself and boasted that he could beat him. Lucy asked what Guildarts had been doing. Naruto grinned in anticipation while Mirajane and Urza explained. Naruto could not wait to spar with Guildarts again. He vanished in a flash and reappeared beside Guildarts. Naruto greeted Guildarts but immediately noticed something was wrong. Guildarts' magic flow was disrupted at his arm. Naruto asked whether Guildarts' arm was gone. Guildarts sighed, acknowledged Naruto would notice, but grinned and insisted it would not stop him. He proposed a taijutsu racing match across the road, and Naruto accepted as parts of Magnolia shifted to create a path. Lucy watched with anticipation and then heard sounds of fighting. Urza suggested it was probably where Naruto had gone. Two figures in the distance seemed to be racing. In a blink they sped past the guild doors and crashed into the bar, then picked themselves up to argue about who had won. Naruto claimed he had landed 153 hits and won. Guildarts claimed the opposite. Their childish bickering drew exasperated looks from the others while Wendy, Carla, and Lucy inspected Guildarts more closely. Natsu yelled for a fight, but Guildarts easily dispatched him and set him on the ceiling, telling the kid not now. Guildarts scanned the room and noted a couple of new faces. Naruto boasted that he was the one who recruited people and that the guild would be empty without him. Guildarts greeted Makarov and asked how a mission had gone. Makarov's response made Guildarts laugh, rub the back of his head, and admit the mission had not gone well. A stunned silence fell over the room. People muttered in disbelief and wondered if Guildarts was joking. Naruto clenched his fists and wondered who could have done it. Makarov finished speaking, and Guildarts walked to the wall. He thanked Makarov, said he had to get back home and start feeling alive again, told Natsu he had brought something back for him, laughed, and left, breaking through the wall as he went. Lucy's eyes became wide discs while a guild member told the group they could use the front door. Natsu laughed and said he wondered what the old man had for him and that he was all fired up. He then ignited his fist and punched through the wall, creating another hole and drawing more complaints. He told Happy that they were leaving as well. Naruto grinned noticeably. Makarov warned Naruto, but Naruto was already moving. Naruto formed a Rasengan and charged through the wall, declaring that he and Guildarts were not finished and ordering Guildarts to come back. The wall collapsed in an over-the-top display of power as Naruto dashed outside. Sasuke sighed while Nami flashed a mischievous grin and wondered if they should follow outside. The others shouted no and tackled the two, preventing them from doing anything. Naruto chuckled as he watched the Sound 4 struggle against his clones. They were supposed to be elite, yet none of them had managed to destroy a single decoy. He noticed something wrong. There were only 3 of them on the field, so where was the 4th? A 4th figure stepped out from the trees, an orange-haired girl dressed like her teammates and their master. She apologized for being late, panting, and immediately drew hostile looks from the others. One of the men walked up and kicked her aside, sneering that someone like her had no place there and that they were doing her a favor by keeping her alive. Naruto's fists tightened as those insults echoed in his memory. The voices repeated cruel taunts, and a faint red tint flared at the edges of his vision. He dispelled his clones, surprising the members of the Sound Four. The two-headed members smirked and boasted that they were far too powerful for him, but the smirk vanished when Naruto struck. A golden fist connected, sending the two-headed man stumbling backward, and Naruto reappeared to disable another with a precise, non-lethal strike that left him incapacitated. The last member backed away in fear. Leaves fluttered from the trees with the force of the confrontation as Naruto turned to face the girl. She backed off, frightened, and asked who he was. Naruto introduced himself as Naruto Uzumaki and declared that she was coming with him. The girl asked why she should come and warned him to stay back, raising her flute defensively. Naruto moved closer without hesitation and swiftly lifted her in a bridal carry, carrying her calmly toward Konoha. The girl protested and flushed with embarrassment but was unable to free herself. Naruto told her he was taking her somewhere, and then clarified that it was not Konoha. He formed a shadow clone and entrusted the girl to it, instructing the clone to take her to the guild. The clone nodded and dashed away at great speed, causing her to scream in fear. Naruto muttered to himself that he seemed to be the recruiter everyone sent to. Turning, he saw Minato approaching, carrying an unconscious Orochimaru over his shoulder. Minato bowed deeply and begged Naruto for forgiveness, expressing regret for his past crimes and insisting he wanted to help. Naruto quietly replied that he could not heal those wounds. Minato pleaded for a chance to make amends, and in that moment he saw something he had not expected. Naruto was crying. Natsu opened the door and cheerfully greeted them, and Happy echoed the greeting. Gildart smiled and said he was glad to see them. Natsu replied that it had been a long time since they'd been here, and Happy agreed that it felt like forever. Natsu asked Gildarts what he had brought, but Gildarts redirected the conversation, asking how Natsu and Lisanna had been getting along while he was gone. Natsu reacted with a stunned expression and told Gildarts that Lisanna had died 2 years ago. Gildarts' eyes widened as memories of young Natsu and Lisanna flooded back. He offered his condolences awkwardly. Natsu reacted angrily and began to leave, but Happy called after him. Natsu stopped and revealed that while he had been gone he had met a dragon. He described the dragon as black as the night. When Gildarts asked where it had been, Natsu said it had been at sacred Amizania and that it was the real reason he had failed his quest. Gildarts warned that the black dragon was long gone, out flying in the wild blue yonder. Natsu insisted he could track it down. Gildarts then pulled off his cloak, and Natsu and Happy gasped at the sight of his bandages and the wooden prosthetics replacing his original arm and leg. Gildarts explained that the encounter had been over before he knew what hit him. He described the dragon's overwhelming power, saying it had struck with such force that he had lost an arm and a leg and had been left gravely wounded. He warned that this dragon was no friend to anyone and that even the strongest fighters would struggle against it. Natsu bristled and insisted that dragon slayers were not called that for nothing, claiming he could defeat such a creature. Naruto walked home with memories pressing on his mind. Books, Acnologia, the King of Dragons, Zeref, and the near eradication of the dragons. He wondered whether this was the evil his mentor had warned about. Kurama answered in his head that it was definitely not normal. Naruto walked in silence beneath rustling leaves, climbed to his favorite tree, and lay on a branch, but he could not sleep. As he stared up at the sky, a large storm began to gather. Naruto remarked to Kurama that it did not feel normal, and Kurama agreed. Lightning crashed as Naruto walked toward the guild hall. He fell to his knees as thunder cracked and then looked up to see the guild hall gone, swallowed by a strange darkness that seemed to consume everything. Naruto woke disoriented, complaining about a headache and the odd snowfall of floating bubbles. Wendy called out for him, and he responded in confusion about the strange snow and bubbles. Natsu suddenly popped out of the ground, bewildered by the scene, and soon his eyes widened in surprise. Wendy felt a rush of relief at not being alone. Wendy asked Natsu and Naruto if they had any idea what had happened. Naruto ignored the question and made a ball of the strange snow-like substance, launching it at Natsu. A playful snowball fight erupted between the two, ending with Naruto shoveling more of the substance into Natsu's mouth while casually apologizing that he did not know what had caused the storm. Wendy, sobbing, explained that a huge hole had opened in the sky and that the guild hall, the town, and everyone in it had been icky into it. She feared they were the only survivors. Naruto stared at her in disbelief, then laughed in a way that made Wendy nervous before he calmed and tried to reassure her that the storm had unsettled her. He believed none of the others were dead. Wendy asked if she and Natsu had somehow avoided being SCK'd in. Carla appeared from the cloud-like disturbance to confirm they had survived and to note that being dragon slayers had protected them from the worst of the phenomenon. Naruto demanded to know how he had survived, and Carla told him to stop yelling. Naruto snapped back, claiming he was older, and Carla retorted with annoyance. Carla then emphasized that what mattered was that they were alive. Natsu leapt up, furious that Carla seemed to dismiss the disappearance of the others. Wendy nodded in agreement at the reality of what had happened, and Natsu began to scream in grief. Carla told him not to waste his breath because, in her assessment, those taken by the phenomenon no longer existed. While Carla and Wendy argued, Naruto sat and concentrated. Carla urged Naruto to get to Idolas, insisting it was important. Naruto stood, removed his glove, and invoked a technique he called Six Paths, World Portal. A golden rectangle arose from the ground, with a rippling purple center. Naruto explained that he had created a portal to Idolas and that he knew what it was. He noted that having a centuries-old demon could be advantageous. He told them to prepare for a dangerous journey and led the way toward the portal. As they stepped in, they gazed at the sight before them. Daylight skimmed floating rocks and islands suspended among clouds, and strange, giant mushrooms dotted the landscape like an otherworldly forest. Natsu urged Happy to come along, and Happy latched on as they flew with Wendy and Carla not far behind. After a while of flying, Happy and Carla's wings suddenly disappeared, sending them, Natsu, and Wendy tumbling toward the ground. They plunged into the soft caps of a cluster of giant mushrooms and finally came to rest on one of them. Wendy asked Carla how their wings had stopped working, and Carla explained that magic was a limited resource in this world. Natsu, with his head comically stuck against the mushroom, struggled free while still trying to catch his breath. Wendy admitted she felt slightly strange, but ready to move on. Once freed, Natsu leapt up, full of determination, and announced that they needed to find where their friends had been taken. Naruto wandered through the area, curious and cautious. He tripped on a root and collided with someone, sending both of them stumbling. He looked up to find Lucy Heartfilia in a striking outfit standing before him. Both were startled. Lucy felt flustered by the sudden, awkward encounter while Naruto blinked, embarrassed and a little bewildered. Naruto introduced himself with a confident grin and then suddenly used a power that transported Lucy to the Fairy Tale Guild Hall. Lucy, astonished and indignant, demanded to know how he had done it. Naruto boasted about his skill with a charming, if somewhat boastful, manner. The two of them arrived in front of the guild as all eyes turned toward them. Fairy Tale members immediately questioned who the newcomer was. Naruto declared that he was Naruto Uzumaki, the reincarnation of Ashura Otsutsuki, their first guild master. His proclamation caused gasps around the room. Wendy, embarrassed by the attention, called him out. Lucy moved to confront him, attempting to strike, but Naruto intercepted her attack and warned her not to get too feisty. While this tense exchange unfolded, Natsu, Happy, Wendy, and Carla had been walking for miles without finding any sign of human life. They eventually came across two nervous natives who were bowing and pleading for mercy before them. Natsu tried to get answers, but the locals were fixated on Happy. When Happy stepped forward, the natives screamed and scrambled away in fear. Natsu was taken aback and scolded them for their behavior. Back in the guild hall, Jet and Nab challenged Naruto's claim. Naruto removed his glove to demonstrate his power, and the sight of it left everyone awestruck. The villagers recognized something familiar in Naruto's energy and instinctively bowed, addressing him as Ashura. Naruto, uncomfortable with the sudden reverence, urged them to stand and go about their business, insisting on being called by his name instead of a title. Suddenly, Sasuke and Nami crashed through the roof, and a red-haired woman slid into the room alongside them with a spear held threateningly. The guild froze. Urza, recovering her footing, announced herself as a hunter and lunged forward with fierce intensity. Naruto met her charge with a confident, determined grin and announced that he intended to face her, standing ready to defend his position among them. Naruto cracked a foxy grin and introduced himself as Naruto Uzumaki, announcing that Urza Nightwalker would meet her worst nightmare. Urza immediately switched weapons and charged, but Naruto only smirked before vanishing from sight. She was struck by a sudden, overwhelming impact that sent her flying into the wall. The wall shattered and she collided with Natsu, Wendy, Carla, and Happy. Natsu looked to Urza in confusion and called her name. Urza launched a sudden attack toward him, and Natsu narrowly dodged, yelling for everyone to stop. Naruto warned that this was not the Urza they knew, explaining that they were in an alternate dimension where this world's Urza was hostile and the real Urza was likely imprisoned. He knocked the Idolas version of Urza away from Natsu. Naruto ordered everyone to get into the guild and tell Levi to activate the teleporter, promising he would stall for time. Wendy nodded and, with Happy and Carla, hauled the protesting Natsu toward the guild. Naruto turned back to Urza and, with a grin, suggested they have some fun. Sasuke watched as Idolas Levi worked on a complex machine. Levi told him to be quiet and focus on getting the teleporter online. Sasuke asked if Naruto would be left behind. Levi insisted he would not be, and added that Naruto always found a way. Naruto burst through the doors and demanded that the teleporter be started immediately. Levi complied, and as she channeled the spell, rocks and pebbles began to lift and the air vibrated unnervingly. Naruto warned that he had pushed Urza away but that she might return if her dragon aided her. A distant roar echoed and the vibration intensified. People and objects began to float. Lucy urged everyone to hold on. A blinding flash filled the room, and when it cleared, the guild was gone. Urza cursed at the retreating figures, frustrated that the teleporter had succeeded before she could reach them. A man stood beside her, studying the scorched ground and commenting on the wasteful power of teleportation magic. Urza remarked on his presence. He expressed concern over the resourcefulness of the Fairy Tail Guild and their resilience. Urza dismissed them as insects that should be crushed quickly, while the man noted that the group had escaped multiple times and that their opponents were becoming a growing problem. A voice called out that someone would be taking their friends back. Urza demanded to know where the voice came from and readied her spear. The voice identified itself as familiar, and Urza tightened her grip as she realized it was Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto stepped forward with a light-hearted comment about the man's pink armor, which brightened the man and earned him a thumbs up. Urza glared and slammed her spear into the ground, warning him not to praise them. Back at the guild, the group was sprawled on the floor picking themselves up and complaining about the teleporter ride. Wakaba admitted she would never get used to it. Natsu admitted he was lost. Lucy stood up irritated and scolded Levi for taking too long to start the teleporter, insisting Urza had nearly reached them. Levi snapped back at Lucy, and Natsu rose as the two bickered. Natsu asked who the attacker had been earlier. Mira Jane explained that it had been one of the royal city's captains from the magic warfare units, Urza Nightwalker. Natsu remembered the sudden, brutal assault and how he had narrowly avoided her strikes. Naruto wrapped an arm around Natsu's shoulders and declared that this would be exciting, and Natsu pumped his fist, brimming with enthusiasm. Naruto teased that, without magic, Natsu might be left to handle some of the fighting on his own, and Natsu's expression quickly fell at the thought. Outside the immediate commotion, a conversation clarified the situation. One of the newcomers asked to confirm that the others were from a different world called Earthland and had come all the way here to save their friends. Natsu answered emphatically that they had. The visitors were surprised to learn that a fairy tale guild existed in this world. As well, and even more surprised that Urza was an ally back home. Carla and Happy acknowledged how strange it must seem. Naruto tended to Sasuke and Nami, healing recent wounds while asking what had happened to them. Sasuke explained that Urza Nightwalker and her dragon had been relentless, wearing them down before striking decisively. Some of the group lamented the loss of the pink-armored man as an enemy now that he would have to be fought. Suddenly the gravity of the situation became clear. Wendy explained that the king had pulled them into this world and that if they did not rescue their friends, those captured here would be converted into pure magical energy and lost forever. Idolos, Wendy suggested, painfully, that it might be best to forget those they had lost. Naruto's hands clenched briefly, and Sasuke and Nami glared at the others. Nami rushed forward, furious, demanding to know if abandoning people was the usual course of action. A royal guard demanded whether they would abandon their comrades. Another guard declared that anyone who defied the king was as good as dead. Nami's eyes were shadowed by her hair as she whispered words that filled the hearts of Earthland Fairy Tale with pride. She would rather die with her comrades than run away from them and abandon them. Nami's eyes were shadowed by her hair as she whispered that she would rather die with her comrades than run away and abandon them. Nami then ran out the door while the Idolos Guild watched her in stunned silence. Naruto called out a raucous congratulations to the group, and Sasuke followed after Nami a few moments later. Natsu declared that no attempt to scare him into fleeing the king would work and that he would not leave without his friends. Lucy watched with sympathetic eyes while Lee-sana retreated into a room and slammed the door. Later, Naruto watched Natsu having a picnic with his students and offered their extra food. Natsu loudly refused, jumped up, and miserably failed at catching a tiny frog. Naruto shrugged, blurred over to Natsu, munched a sandwich, and commented that it was delicious. Natsu told him to shut up and swung at Naruto, who caught the punch effortlessly. A huge frog-like creature suddenly rose from the sand and sent Natsu, Wendy, Happy, and Carla screaming. Happy cried that it was enormous. The creature raised a hand as Happy warned Natsu that it looked ready to attack. Natsu braced as if to call on a fire dragon attack but then remembered he could not use fire magic anymore. The creature chased them for a few seconds while Naruto's team watched with amusement. A slash of blue magic then cut through the air, startling the creature and causing it to stumble back before retreating. Idolos Lucy skidded back and huffed. Several of the others cheered for Lucy, calling her Scary Lucy, and she protested that they should not keep adding that nickname. Naruto suddenly flashed to stand beside Lucy, cheeks flushed and eyes glazed. He slurred that she was pretty and tried to be playful before stumbling and falling forward onto the ground. Sasuke and Nami hurried over. Nami muttered that Naruto had not stopped drinking, and Naruto hiccuped and slurred incoherently. Naruto grinned broadly and giggled. Lucy told him to sit down, but Naruto refused and ran out of the cafe, then paused and sniffed with a surprisingly calm demeanor. Armed figures then surrounded him and demanded to know if he was a fairy tale wizard and that he must come with them. Naruto responded angrily and challenged them, causing the captors to hesitate. In the ensuing commotion, many of the men were flung backward by a sudden burst of force. Naruto shouted that they needed to learn not to interfere, and Sasuke, Nami, Lucy, Wendy, Natsu, Carla, and Happy rushed out and pulled Naruto along with them. Lucy scolded Naruto for alerting nearly every magic guard in the area and for making them all nervous. Naruto replied that there were many reasons for his behavior, and Lucy reiterated that she had told him not to call her by the teasing nickname. A voice identical to Idolos Lucy's called out nearby. A man demanded that the other Lucy be brought over, and the second Lucy snapped back, insisting that they let her go. Natsu and the Idolos Lucy froze in astonishment at the sight of another Lucy. Happy and Carla admitted they had no idea what was happening. Natsu declared that they had to save her and leapt into action. The other Lucy produced a key and began to invoke the Gate of the Scorpion, but Wendy warned that their magic would not function there. The other Lucy completed the phrase, and a tense moment followed. A man in a red and white outfit with a metal tail emerged and shouted his approval. He introduced himself as Scorpio and unleashed a sand-buster attack, a massive torrent of sand that slammed into the soldiers and sent them sprawling. Natsu stared in shock at the clear display of unfamiliar magic, and Wendy could barely believe what she had seen. Naruto slipped away from the fight and vanished in a flash. He reappeared inside a strange cave covered in ancient writing, drawings, and marks. He ordered Kurama to activate the seal. Kurama emerged and gathered chakra into his paw, striking one of the round symbols. The grooves on the wall glowed as the seal seemed to pull free from the stone. A burst of chakra rippled through the air, sending an anime-style shockwave that rattled rocks and sent boulders tumbling. Then the energy subsided. Naruto turned and saw a man standing behind him with brown, spiky hair and white bandages wrapped like a headband. Ashura asked whether Naruto was his reincarnation. Naruto greeted Ashura respectfully. Ashura waved off the formality, dismissing the title, and Kurama tensed at their back and forth over names. Ashura explained that this place was his tomb, where he had stored the last of his chakra so he could take form briefly to discuss the plan. Naruto reported that Acnologia had risen along with resurrected dragons. He did not know how Acnologia had learned the spell, but he was certain the goal was to destroy the world. Ashura asked whether the plan should be carried out on the battlefield or before, and Naruto replied that it had to be on the battlefield. The plan was dangerous. Naruto would have to merge with the tailed beasts, becoming effectively immortal and vastly more powerful, but the cost would be that the tailed beasts would be lost forever. Naruto felt the weight of what that meant. Those beasts had been with him since he left Konoha and had been his closest companions. Using the technique would feel like killing them himself. Ashura admitted he did not want the outcome either, but said Naruto would have to use the jutsu their father had created. Naruto acknowledged that the jutsu would break his heart even more. Kurama listened in stunned silence. The thought that all the bonds he had forged could vanish threatened to drive him to despair. Kurama begged for some way to restore them, but Ashura said there was no certainty. He could only hope there might be a way, and then, with a grin, urged Naruto to believe it. Naruto returned the grin and mirrored the gesture, and Kurama muttered that the two of them were too much alike and told them to stop with the theatrics. They pushed aside the melancholy and returned to planning. Naruto described reconnaissance. One of his clones had been patrolling the dragon's camp and had been dispelled, but it had gathered valuable information. There were as many as 1,239 dragons and several unfamiliar monster species. One resembled a massive sea serpent called the Sea Kings. Another species, the Dracani, were serpentine warriors that moved with the DSPLN of ancient phalanxes, and there were hydras, distant relatives of dragons and sea kings with multiple heads that could spit corrosive acids. Naruto shared the memories with Ashura so he could see what the scout had seen. Ashura said they would have to gather forces from all the elemental nations, along with Fairy Tail and their allied guilds, and hoped Naruto could persuade the stubborn Kage. Naruto was confident that when he sent his memories and the evidence to them, they would agree to an alliance. Ashura noted that Kurama could be relied upon if diplomacy failed. They laughed, and Kurama gave a resigned sigh at their stubborn optimism. Ashura warned that his chakra was fading and that his form would not last long. He urged Naruto to return and save Fairy Tail. Naruto expressed faith in Fairy Tail's strength and said he would gather his team and then head to the elemental villages. Ashura nodded and waved farewell to the reincarnation. Naruto waved back and stepped into the portal. Naruto re-emerged with Sasuke and Nami trailing after him. They flashed to the Hokage's office, where ANBU operatives lay unconscious after attempting to stop Naruto. Naruto demanded a meeting with all the other Kage, slamming his palms on Minato's desk. Minato sighed and reminded Naruto how difficult coordinating that would be, then added, half teasing, that he wanted something in return. He wanted Naruto to call him Papa. Naruto reacted with disbelief and irritation, and his anger flared as he threatened retribution for the tease. Minato calmly waited for a response, and Naruto, after a begrudging moment, complied and called him Papa. Minato pretended not to have heard and asked Naruto to repeat himself. Naruto had started to explain that his ears were a bit clogged when he was abruptly cut off. He erupted at his father, using a rude insult and demanding that the meeting be set. Minato laughed, nodded, and told Naruto to sit tight for a couple of days. Naruto stomped out of the tower, fuming that everything was stupid. Nami observed that at least he had secured the meeting. Naruto continued grumbling, marched over to the Hokage faces while muttering, and then sat down to meditate as Nami and Sasuke began to train. Naruto wondered whether Goku could sense what was happening. The tailed beast warned that the army was drawing closer and that Naruto would need to secure the alliance quickly before they reached Fiore and the elemental nations. Naruto thought he should not worry and reminded himself that he was capable, jokingly flattering his own skill. The tailed beast responded with a firm refusal. Naruto entered the room with his team and approached the Kage and their bodyguards. He thanked them for coming and assured them the session would not be a waste of time. The Raikage of Kumo impatiently demanded to know why they had been summoned. Naruto explained that Acnologia, the king of dragons, had gathered more than 1,000 resurrected dragons and an army of monstrous weapons and creatures, including weapons that could threaten divine beings and corrosive agents that could burn through nearly anything. Snorted and arrogantly insisted that Kumo could easily defeat such armies and that they posed no real threat. Naruto grew irritated and clarified that one dragon alone could destroy a city if given enough time. Continued to question why he should help. Naruto raised his voice and warned that these dragons would destroy the world. Arose from his seat, igniting his lightning cloak in anger. Naruto responded by rising as well and focusing an intense, hostile aura toward A. The pressure in the room rose until the building began to crack and the Kage struggled to stand. Stared at Naruto in fear as a brief flare of golden energy surrounded him and then vanished along with the oppressive pressure. In a blink, Naruto appeared directly in front of A and rendered him unconscious with a final, forceful display meant to convince him. A then found himself suspended in darkness. The darkness parted and a vivid vision began to play, as if projected onto the inside of his mind. A voice that sounded familiar whispered in the vision. As he looked closer, he saw the largest and most fearsome beast he had ever encountered, a midnight black dragon that radiated power and authority. The dragon spoke of traveling to the lands of Fiore and the elemental villages to crush them under their claws, claiming none could stand against them and that even the holder of the 9 tails would be unaware. Around the dragon, countless monsters and dragons raised their heads and roared. The sheer number of them made her realize the true scale of the threat. The scene shifted to show some of the monsters, a serpent-like creature as large as the dragons, a half-snake hybrid, and a many-headed beast. The army in the vision was terrifying in scope. The visions ended and they returned to the room, panting and sweating. He announced that an alliance was necessary. Mei demanded to know why he had changed his stance so suddenly. Anoki demanded to know what Naruto had done. Naruto calmly explained that he had shown the memories and evidence he had found regarding Acnologia's armies and warned that they would not want to see it for themselves. The Kage fell silent in shock. Slammed his fist onto his desk, breaking it, and declared that Kumo would join the alliance. Mei sighed and explained that Kiri's resources and forces were depleted after the civil war, but that they would still join in the hope of bringing stability. Naruto turned to Anoki. The elderly IWA leader grumbled about disrespectful youngsters but ultimately agreed to join, hoping the threat was not some prank. Naruto then addressed Baki of Suna. Baki admitted he would join mainly because his students would never forgive him otherwise, since Naruto's students had saved their brother, and because Suna might gain trade and resources once the conflict was resolved. He agreed to join. Naruto bowed and arranged the first meeting of Konoha, Kumo, IWA, Kiri, Suna, and the allied magic guilds to take place the following day in the town of Magnolia. He instructed them to ask any townsman for a man named Fire Shadow and they would be guided to him. With that, he and his students departed in a flash. The Kage sat in stunned silence until Mei remarked that Naruto seemed like a capable young man. One day later, the 3 Kage, their Jonin escorts, and guards arrived at the entrance to Magnolia. Baki expressed amazement at the town's renovated entrance and buildings, which evoked memories of grand locations. A young boy with dark navy hair approached them and explained that Fire Shadow had said 4 people would be coming to look for him, and confirmed the visitors were the ones expected. Stepped forward and nodded for the boy to lead them. They stopped in front of a large building with a banner reading Fairy Tale. Anoki asked if this was the guild Fire Shadow belonged to. The boy confirmed that it was and that Fire Shadow expected them, along with the Hokage and leaders from other guilds. They entered the guild hall and were taken aback by the number of people inside, who were celebrating and chatting loudly. Mei wondered if she might find something of interest among the crowd, but Ao interrupted, complaining that in his day guests of such importance would not be invited into such a crowded place and that people once dressed with more dignity. He mentioned that they used to propose to each other for dances, but he stopped when he noticed Mei's angry glare directed at him. A guild member announced that the guests had arrived, and everyone looked up to find Naruto standing on the balcony. The mages in the room stared at the shinobi who had just walked in. Naruto welcomed them and told them to enjoy themselves a little before they began discussing plans. He vanished and reappeared beside Minato, prompting baffled looks from the Kages as they were reminded of Naruto's resemblance to the fourth Hokage. The leaders broke off to mingle with the others, though several intended to quietly gather information about the famous fairy tale. Naruto, however, celebrated with unabashed enthusiasm. He did not care that most people did not appreciate bright orange, their lack of taste was their problem. The guild leaders, the visiting shinobi, and Naruto then moved into a newly constructed meeting room beneath Fairy Tail. Naruto opened the meeting, channeled chakra into his palm, and placed it on a seal on the table. A holographic map of Fiore and the elemental villages sprang to life. Naruto explained that Acnologia would most likely strike somewhere in Fiore before moving on to the elemental villages, but that they were prepared. He proposed leading Acnologia to Tenryjima Island to start the battle and asked for suggestions on how to lure him there. Ichiya raised his hand and offered to create a unique trail with his distinctive perfume that might guide Acnologia to the island. Naruto nodded and said that if that failed, he would use shadow clones to lead the dragon. Mei suggested setting up something that would generate a large amount of chakra or magic to draw Acnologia, and Makarov remained standing among the gathered leaders. Naruto agreed that the strongest fighters should unleash their most powerful jutsu and spells to create enough energy for Acnologia to sense, though he also acknowledged Ichiya's idea with a wry note about the perfume. He added that the IWA shinobi should form solid ground to allow strikes from multiple angles while making it harder for Acnologia to counterattack. The map zoomed in on Tenryjima Island, which was shown with stone covering where water usually lay. Millions of shinobi and mages formed a circle with Acnologia at the center, and countless dragons and other creatures filled the sky and land. Naruto explained that Acnologia would likely believe himself untouchable in the middle, but that most mages and shinobi would focus on distracting him along with the other dragons and creatures. A smaller force of AS-rank shinobi and S-rank mages would carry out an offensive combined jutsu and spell. They continued planning until night fell and then began preparing the battlefield where the final battle would take place. A short time later, Naruto waited underground with nearly 200,000 AS-rank ninja and mages. They did not need to bait Acnologia. Someone had already caught his attention, and Naruto knew who it was. He remembered following a strange man with black hair who radiated a dark aura. Naruto jumped onto a branch as he pursued him. Zirif turned and made it clear that he knew Naruto was there. Zirif launched himself, but 9 golden chakra arms restrained him. Naruto said that he had seen Zirif when he woke and demanded why he had spoken Acnologia and whether he had summoned him. Zirif laughed and proclaimed that puny mortals would never understand and that the world would. Naruto slammed Zirif into a boulder, shattering it into pieces. Naruto challenged whatever Zirif intended and vowed to stop him, adding that Fairy Tail would help. Zirif's eyes widened as the red glint faded. He breathed the name Natsu before disappearing. Naruto shouted that he was not done confronting him. He had informed the village leaders about Zirif. Now they only needed to wait for him and his army. Laxus approached, greeting Naruto, and Naruto hugged him, surprised that he had joined the alliance. Naruto expressed disbelief that Laxus would take part, and Laxus said he could have a little fun. Naruto told Laxus that he was the commander and that Laxus would have to follow his commands, to which Laxus told him to be quiet. A roar filled the air as rocks fell from above. Techniques and spells sounded and screams came from the diversion force higher up. Naruto and the others looked up in fear and awe at the massive beast above them, separated only by a thin layer of rock. Naruto ordered everyone to charge the collaboration, but only. Silence answered him. He turned, confused, and demanded what was happening. A trembling ninja stepped forward and stammered that they might not be able to do this because the dragon was too strong. Naruto grabbed the man's shirt and berated him, accusing him of cowardice, reminding him that he had been trained since he was 6 and should not act like a novice. Naruto threw the man to the ground and challenged the rest, telling them that their friends and family were risking their lives to save the world. He asked what their villages and guilds had taught them and what their loved ones meant to them, admitting that he could not make a grand speech like some could, but that he still had the courage to stand up to evil and fight for the next generation. He called on anyone with the courage to stand with him to win the war for their predecessors. The assembly fell silent, then one person rose and faced the others. Another followed, and soon everyone walked up to Naruto and stood beside him, determination burning in their eyes. Naruto counted down 3, 2, 1 as golden chakra enveloped his body. The ninja and the mages began to charge the collaboration. The army of shinobi and mages unleashed their jutsu and spells. The combined mass of chakra and magical energy formed a massive beam that struck the ceiling, cracking it and slamming into Acnologia. Naruto called for a charge as the soldiers leaped into the night sky and descended on the dragons. Neji was part of the distraction group. Whatever Naruto's plan was had better work, because his comrades were falling fast. He clenched his teeth and fists. Acnologia was going to pay. A deep rumble rolled through the battlefield as pressure built, and the air rippled. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the ground, blasting away any creature that came too close and striking Acnologia, who roared in pain. Neji watched in awe as an army of shinobi and mages poured from the hole in the ground and launched toward the dragon, led by a figure wreathed in golden chakra. The golden figure floated and concentrated dark chakra into a condensed sphere. Through his Byakugan, Neji could tell the jutsu about to be unleashed was extraordinary, so concentrated that anyone else attempting it would have been overwhelmed. The golden figure, Naruto, unleashed a bijou bomb, sending the sphere shooting from his hands with incredible speed. For a moment Neji thought he saw the fleeting image of a golden fox, as if an angelic form had taken shape. Naruto watched the condensed ball slam into Acnologia and stagger the dragon. He turned to the distraction group, who stared at him and the S-rank shinobi in awe. Naruto barked in order to hurry, and the group immediately charged. The dragons and monsters, however, were relentless. Though the shinobi and mages outnumbered them, some enemies were as dangerous as the mighty Chome, and the alliance could not afford to stall until Acnologia was healed. Naruto bit his finger and smeared the blood across his eyes. 9 huge-tailed beasts materialized and surged forward against the dragons as Naruto's golden chakra faded. At first, some allies hesitated, but when they realized the tailed beasts fought on their side, they pressed forward with renewed determination. Naruto formed a Sage Mode clone, entered Sage Mode, and sprinted toward an oncoming dragon with impressive speed. He missed with a chakra-enhanced kunai, but the force of Sage Mode found its mark. The dragon was struck and staggered, roaring as shinobi leapt onto it and finished it off. Naruto moved without wasting time and formed a spinning blue chakra shuriken in his hand. He used wind style, Raisin Shuriken, to send it slicing through weaker dragons until it met a hydra, where it expanded in a burst of energy and made several enemies vanish in a brilliant flash. He flowed through hand seals and unleashed thousands of black lightning bolts that spread across the battlefield, neutralizing more threats. Calling on tailed beast power, he channeled black lightning, then shaped energy with his mouth to release another technique. An array of wind-formed figures surged outward and charged the dragons. By then, Sage Mode had faded and Naruto panted from fatigue and exertion. He spun a Rasengan and slammed it into the stomach of Drakani, then leapt and spun through the air, tossing shuriken and kunai in all directions, each weapon enhanced with different elemental chakra. Landing, he bit his thumb and slammed his hand to the ground to perform a summoning. A puff of smoke produced Gamabunta and several other large toads, who charged into the fray to engage the dragons. Naruto grinned despite his exhaustion and told Gamabunta to handle the dragons. He settled into a meditative squat to gather more natural chakra and prepare for the next wave. Shikamaru groaned in annoyance at the unending onslaught. The dragons kept coming. He almost ordered Guy and Lee to use their secret sunset genjutsu, But he held back. That technique was only for emergencies. Shikamaru mumbled the shadow possession jutsu as he caught another dragon for the nearby mages to finish. The shadow wavered and the dragon immediately started moving, swatting the mages away. Shikamaru sighed and drew a kunai, aware that his chakra was low and he would have to rely on taijutsu, a skill he was not confident in. The dragon leapt and charged toward him, and Shikamaru's eyes widened at the creature's immense size. Sasuke then formed a wind technique. A huge chakra shuriken tore through the dragon and returned to its user. Shikamaru realized at once who had produced it. Shikamaru recognized Sasuke standing there, panting and holding a massive concentration of chakra. Sasuke reassured Shikamaru that he would handle things, then leapt into the air and launched the shuriken, cutting through several more dragons. The technique detonated in a bright burst of chakra, obliterating anything nearby. Shikamaru watched Sasuke in awe. It was clear he was far ahead of the other genin. Then Nami ran past, launching the same jutsu at the dragons. Shikamaru observed the two shinobi who had trained under one of the most dangerous figures. They moved in sync, tossing kunai, producing astonishing jutsu, and covering each other. They were almost unrecognizable compared to the brash youths they had seemed in Konoha. Nearby, the Kages flashed in and out among the dragons, cutting them down swiftly while Tsunade, one of the legendary sannin, tended to the wounded alongside her summons. Lee somersaulted over Shikamaru and urged him to get up, insisting they match Nami and Sasuke's youthful speed. Shikamaru sighed, rose slowly, and dusted himself off, muttering that it was a drag as he wired exploding tags to his kunai. He hoped the war would end soon so he could return to lazing and cloud-watching with Choji. Kakashi slammed his lightning-infused palm into a dragon's head as it roared, while Guy energetically battered the beasts with relentless strikes. Kakashi realized the battle was dire. Every dragon they felled seemed to be replaced by more, and some of the larger ones could wipe out squads at once. The odds were not in their favor. He leaped from a fallen dragon as another smashed into it and launched kunai rigged with explosive tags, only to watch them glance off the creature's tough scales. Kakashi taunted the dragon and then used water style to summon a water dragon that clashed with the beast. Guy, already opening the seventh gate, dove in and unleashed powerful attacks that forced the dragon to retreat. While Guy handled that one, Kakashi targeted the smaller, weaker dragons, though there were still too many. A roar split the air and silenced the battlefield. Kakashi watched in shock as a massive midnight-colored beast rose to full height. Acnologia had been healed and was ready to unleash his wrath on the Alliance. Acnologia had never felt so much rage. He declared that the Kyuubi's holder would pay and then unleashed a sweeping beam of energy that scorched the land and destroyed anything too close. He watched the fighters attempt to stop him and treated them as insignificant, but then a tremendous impact struck him and sent him tumbling backward onto the cold ground. When he glared toward the source, he found the tailed beasts standing together, preparing a massive combined attack. The tailed beasts synchronized and formed another devastating Bijudama. Acnologia intended that this time the attack would not land on him. He gathered dark energy into his maw and fired a barrage of energy projectiles, launching the next exchange between the beast and the allied forces. Naruto's blonde hair swayed in the wind as he stared at the black dragon that had started the war. He launched himself at the dragon with surprising speed and struck it, sending the beast tumbling. The dragon roared while regaining its footing, but Naruto noticed something amiss. The dragon was not fighting as fiercely as he would have expected. Naruto wondered whether Acnologia's magic had been drained. He adopted a taijutsu stance as Acnologia flew toward him, aiming to bite. Naruto smashed its teeth and then kicked with such force the dragon rocketed away. He watched the creature fall to the ground with a heavy thud while the other dragons looked on in stunned silence. The Alliance cheered, but Naruto frowned and asked Kurama what was wrong with Acnologia. A sudden scream pierced the air. A blade arced toward Naruto, and a figure moved to intercept, taking the blow and collapsing to the ground. Soldiers cried out in alarm. Minato had stepped in and fallen, whispering Naruto's name before he was still. The attacker mocked the sacrifice, noting that at least one of the stronger enemies had been taken. The Alliance stood frozen. Naruto glared at the killer. The man wore a white mask marked with a Sharingan eye and a Rinnegan eye and carried a war fan on his back. A cold power radiated from him, rivaling Naruto's own. Naruto shouted in fury, demanding why the man had done it. The masked attacker answered that Naruto could never understand his motives, that he had been abandoned and left to die beneath rocks and that his teammates had not saved him. He spoke with a bitter certainty that the world was cruel and broken, and he urged Naruto to join him in remaking it. Naruto was silent for a moment and then let out a bitter laugh. He rejected the offer, accusing the man of killing his father, slaughtering comrades, and starting the war. He called the man's plans sick and unforgivable. Golden chakra began to envelope Naruto, but this time it felt different and complete. He did not require the tailed beasts for this stage. This was a profound sage-like power, and as it rose, the ground cracked and pressure built until even those at S rank found it difficult to breathe. The masked man shrugged and said he had not needed Naruto anyway, that he intended to kill Naruto once he turned on his friends. He commanded the Zetsu to start the battle. Thousands of pale figures rose from the earth, and Naruto recognized them as Zetsu. He roared and vanished, sending many of them flying with an invisible force. The alliance surged into combat. Taijutsu and ninjutsu clashed across the field in swift, brutal exchanges that left both sides reeling, though many of the Zetsu were only clones. The masked man waited patiently as Naruto barreled through the Zetsu and reached him. Naruto reared his fist to strike, but his blow passed through the man's body as if through mist. Naruto jumped back in confusion. The masked man taunted that Naruto could not touch him while he could touch Naruto, and then lunged, forcing Naruto to dodge a flurry of intangible strikes. The masked man smashed the ground in frustration, and Naruto sprang up, spinning and delivering a kick that likewise passed through him. When the kick went through, the masked man seized Naruto's leg from within and hurled him across the battlefield. Naruto's eyes narrowed. It bothered him that the man had not simply thrown him the moment Naruto closed in. The masked man declared that Acnologia had been taking his words at face value and that he had been siphoning energy all along. He launched himself at Naruto with renewed fury. Naruto moved to dodge each blow, taking a hit and backing away to avoid further strikes. When Naruto asked if this was how the man had come to be, the attacker laughed and taunted him for finally understanding. Naruto ordered the tailed beasts to return to their seal and poured their power inward. He formed hand signs and expelled a thick mist across the battlefield. A tailed beast technique, a toxic mist designed to disrupt the air the masked man relied upon. The attacker had initially dismissed the attack, but the mist made him choke and cough, forcing him to stagger back. A golden fist materialized and slammed into the masked man, sending him skidding across the field. Naruto noted that being intangible did not excuse one from needing to breathe. The masked man rasped in anger and his mask cracked. When it fell away, Naruto stared in surprise at the scarred face beneath. Obito, eyes full of hatred. Naruto shouted that Obito was dead and that he had been reborn as Madara Uchiha. Obito's face contracted in fear as Naruto vanished and reappeared behind him with a kunai at his throat, eyes devoid of mercy. Naruto said goodbye to Obito and slashed his neck. Obito collapsed to the floor, clearly gravely injured and unconscious. Naruto walked away, quickly defeating any Zetsu clone that dared approach. Obito's body shuddered, then an eerie, glowing aura gathered around him as the wound at his neck closed. He sprang to life and lunged at Naruto, seizing him by the throat and screaming that he should die. Naruto tried to free himself with chakra arms but could not break the grip. When Naruto formed a Rasengan, Obito released him and leapt back, spitting in disgust and declaring that the Uzumaki disgusted him. Naruto threw himself forward, determined to end the fight. Obito activated powerful space-bending techniques that hurled Naruto aside, then materialized a sharpened chakra rod and struck Naruto, leaving him winded and thrown back by the force of the attack. Obito taunted that Naruto was nothing compared to him and that he would live long enough to witness the destruction of his friends. Naruto gritted his teeth and lunged again, only to be tossed about like a toy by Obito's dojutsu. Naruto formed a Rasen Shuriken, which burst near Obito. Sasuke appeared at Naruto's side, but Naruto immediately sensed something different about him. Sasuke bore the Yin symbol on his palm, a sign of the power he now carried. A few moments earlier, Sasuke had confronted an ancient sage hovering before him. The sage told Sasuke that he was Indra's reincarnation and identified himself as the Sage of Six Paths, the father of the one whose soul Sasuke now harbored. Sasuke asked who the sage was, and the sage explained the connection and then, with a motion too fast to follow, touched Sasuke's forehead and instructed him to use the powers he had been given to help Naruto. The sage urged him to use them wisely. Back on the battlefield, Sasuke helped Naruto to his feet before Naruto could ask his questions. Sasuke informed Naruto that he was Indra's reincarnation and promised to answer everything later, for now they had to defeat Obito. Naruto nodded, determination clear, and Sasuke summoned a Susanoo while activating his dojutsu. Obito laughed and challenged them to attack. Sasuke teleported near Obito while Naruto used his speed, and the three engaged in fierce close-quarters combat. Obito then made the skies rain with massive meteors. Sasuke and Naruto leapt upward and worked together to shatter the falling rocks and protect their allies, but as their focus remained on the meteors, they failed to notice Obito forming additional hand seals. With a final, ominous motion, Wood erupted from the ground in the form of a massive statue with a menacing face. The statue moved with uncanny purpose and completed its seals, then suddenly unleashed a storm of wooden spikes that rained across the battlefield. Sasuke, already spent from teleporting and destroying meteors, scanned the scene and realized a spike was heading straight for him. He gathered chakra to teleport again but found he could not. His energy reserves had run dry. He fell to his knees and braced himself as the attack closed in. A nearby comrade, Nami Namikaze, had been struck by one of the spikes. She fell to her knees, wounded and fading. She cupped Sasuke's face and, with a trembling voice, urged him not to be sad and to be strong. Sasuke stared in shock and grief as she gave him a final, gentle farewell before passing away. Naruto landed beside him after finishing off the last meteors and looked at Nami in stunned silence, heartbroken and unable to help in time. Naruto, reeling from loss, his father already gone and now his sister, felt rage surge through him. He vowed to kill Obito and commanded Kurama to start the merging process despite the Biju's hesitation. The tailed beasts and Kurama began the ritual immediately, and Naruto's body was flooded with overwhelming chakra until it felt as if it were on fire. In the vision that followed, Naruto found himself in a dim, tunnel-like place surrounded by the tailed beasts. The Biju spoke to him with quiet sorrow, offering their farewells. Naruto apologized to them through tears for what he had put them through. The beasts responded with reassurance that they would gladly sacrifice themselves for him. Gyuki extended a large tentacle like a hand and suggested one last fist bump. Naruto wiped his eyes, managed a small smile, and bumped each of the beasts' fists in turn as they began to fade away, giving their final goodbyes before departing. The floor cracked as boulders and pebbles near him rose into the air. Naruto opened his eyes as 9 tails erupted from behind him, each representing the 9 Biju. Obito raised an eyebrow and remarked that Naruto would be more fun now, then launched himself at him. Naruto immediately took a fighting stance. Obito no longer bothered with his transparency technique. He fought openly and with obvious enjoyment. Naruto, by contrast, was irritated, sad, and angry. Even with the merging and the cost of his friends' lives, he still could not defeat Obito. At best he could match him. Sasuke was nearly out of chakra and could only produce a few more Raisengans, which would not be enough. Naruto and Sasuke could still use the forbidden jutsu as a last resort, but Naruto hoped he could simply outlast Obito. That hope looked thin. Both were stamina and chakra powerhouses. Naruto launched a Raisin Shuriken while Obito responded with a wood absorption technique. Tailed beast style, acid mist and a wood style branch wall collided in the air. The two fearsome shinobi traded ninjutsu without regard for the vast destruction they were causing. The Zetsu forces, the Alliance, and the remnants of the dragons held their positions at a safe distance, well away from the reach of the fighting. Naruto leapt back from spikes Obito had formed and flashed toward him, intending to use a Biju-enhanced Raisin Shuriken. Obito simply absorbed the attack with his Rinnegan. He then activated his battle avatar, a huge golden fox, and charged a Bijudama, which he fired. Obito absorbed that as well. Naruto ran in and attacked with his avatar, hammering the ground with chakra fists. Obito jumped clear, forcing Naruto to close down the avatar and form 6 Bijou Raisenshurikens around himself before launching them. Obito bypassed absorption and sent the projectiles away with Kamui, removing them from the battlefield. That cancellation of effort only increased Naruto's frustration, and the two engaged in an intense taijutsu exchange that sent shockwaves through the terrain. Sasuke called to Naruto and sent a wave of Amaterasu toward Obito. Obito teleported away, laughing with glee as he declared that with Sasuke's arrival he could go all out. Wings erupted from his back and dark patterns spread across his skin. Naruto reacted in alarm, recognizing the new power as Acnologia's influence. Obito taunted that Naruto would be the first to fall to it. Obito's fingers sprouted chakra-enhanced claws, and Naruto barely dodged the swipe. Sasuke teleported beside them but found Obito already behind him. Sasuke tried to retaliate with a back kick, but Obito grabbed his leg and hurled him toward Naruto. Naruto caught his friend, grunting from the force of the impact. Naruto told Sasuke they would have to use the forbidden jutsu and volunteered to take on the burden of the power. Sasuke interrupted with a firm refusal, insisting that he would take it and that Naruto needed to survive for their friends and their guild. Sasuke confessed that he felt everything he loved had been lost. Naruto responded that no one was truly gone, that they were still watching in the sky and living in the heart, and begged Sasuke to let him take the power. Sasuke, on the verge of breaking down, reluctantly agreed and asked Naruto to promise to return in one piece. Naruto smiled and promised, turning his face away to hide the sadness and the tears threatening to fall, then urged Sasuke to begin. Sasuke placed both palms on Naruto's back and concentrated, performing 6 paths, yin-yang transfer. The air rippled and rocks spiraled around them in a miniature tornado. The knight symbol faded from Sasuke's hand and his Sharingan and Rinnegan subsided. He collapsed to the ground, exhausted from the transfer. Sasuke, barely conscious, appealed for Naruto to survive. Naruto watched sorrowfully as Sasuke slumped and then closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they revealed the Manjikyu Sharingan and the Sharingan. A golden chakra aura enveloped him, cracking the ground beneath his feet. Obito sneered at the change and taunted that Naruto had a new weapon to play with. He lunged at incredible speed, but Naruto seemed to vanish. Obito was suddenly struck in the gut and sent flying, colliding with trees and coming to rest in a crater. Naruto appeared in front of him and invoked 6 paths, ultimate elemental destruction. Fire and magma surged up around Obito, water burst from the earth, boulders lifted into the sky, wood sprouted from the ground, lightning danced through the clouds, and wind spun into sharp currents. Obito found himself immobilized as the elements converged and took shape around him. He asked what was happening. Naruto told him calmly that it was his destruction. The elemental forces combined into a glowing, moon-like sphere. Wood formed a protective dome and water swirled around it, while the wind took the shape of multiple blades. The wind blades then swept through the sphere, shattering it into many harmless fragments. Naruto formed a final set of seals and performed 6 paths, heaven's containment. The clouds parted and a luminous, angelic figure descended. The fragments were drawn to the figure and neutralized by its presence before it quietly vanished, leaving Naruto standing where it had been. Urza watched as the manifestation finished and the remaining fragments of Obito were neutralized. Pushing past exhausted members of the alliance, she rushed over despite the limits of her own magic and called to Naruto. She ran to his side, the alliance watching in tense silence, and checked for a pulse. Her heart lurched at the result. Naruto gave no immediate sign of waking. She begged him silently to wake and tried to keep hope alive. Naruto did not spring up with a joke, nor did he immediately soothe the distressed redhead. He lay still as the others gathered, waiting for any sign of movement. Instead he lay there, dead. Urza stammered that she hadn't even gotten to tell him her true feelings, and tears fell from her eyes as the rest of the alliance stared with sorrow, knowing that their hero was gone. An orange leaf-bearing handwriting fluttered down and landed in Urza's hand. Urza wiped her tears, her eyes widened, and then she broke down even more. The message had been written by their fallen hero and declared that he loved Urza. 80 years later, in 2015, people all over the world had forgotten the Great War. Shinobi had vanished and mages had disappeared, but there was one exception. A blonde teenager lying in an orange tree slowly opened his eyes, which were a striking sky blue. The attacks struck several tailed beasts but had nearly no effect. Shikaka raised his ultimate defense, Matatabi evaded, Isabu absorbed the hit, Goku and the others were likewise unaffected by the magic. Acnologia roared in irritation and rose into the sky, firing beams of magical energy at the tailed animals. The chakra bomb the beasts had been charging detonated as they scattered in different directions to avoid the blast. Suddenly a huge sand wave hurtled toward Acnologia. He rose quickly, dodging the wave by inches. A red beam of energy, similar to his own, shot toward him and struck his already scorched chest. He roared again and flew at the tailed fox. They exchanged blows, and the ground trembled with each collision. Acnologia clawed at Kurama, sending the fox tumbling, and Kurama propelled himself upward just as Matatabi lunged with chakra claws. Acnologia unleashed a larger beam, and Isabu absorbed it once more. The dragon snarled at the repeated interference. He wanted to destroy the beasts, but they refused to stay still. Naruto unleashed a multi-Odama Rasengan. Pain tore through Acnologia as multiple chakra spheres struck him, hurling him back and crashing him to the ground. He sprang up, whipped his head around, and fixed his gaze on the one responsible. An unfamiliar prickle of fear touched his throat. The only opponent who could ever challenge him stood before him, and he did not look pleased. Naruto stood with his arms crossed, staring at the great dragon. The tailed beasts and the shinobi and mages near him called his name with hope. Naruto ordered every shinobi and mage to stay out of the fight, told them to handle the other dragons, and left Acnologia to him. Naruto then grinned and challenged Acnologia to begin.